got it, the red one?
Thank you all for coming this evening. I gave it a couple of minutes as people were filing in and getting through the supervisors of the checklist. I'd like to welcome everyone to the 2021 Tilton Northfield Fire District Annual Meeting. For the record, it is 7 p.m. or just after 7 p.m. on March 15, 2021. We are at Winnisquam Regional High School in Tilton, New Hampshire, for the purpose of conducting the Fire District Annual Meeting. My name is Ken Finnemore. I'm the moderator for the Tilton Northfield Fire District. I'd like to introduce Fire Chief Mike Setar and ask him to lead in the salute to the flag of the United States of America.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mike. I'd just like to ask if there's anybody in the audience or in the assembly that is not registered as a voter within the district. You'd identify yourself now. Just let me know. Yes, sir. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So that little area is our area for unregistered voters. Thank you guys very much for coming. I'd also like to introduce the attorney for the fire district, Paul Fitzgerald. He's sitting up here with us. He is not registered. He will not be voting. Ooh. All right. The annual meeting is a time to conduct the business at hand, but it's also a time to celebrate the efforts of the fire department. And many of them are here tonight, very professional group. And when you need them, they show up, and they are the best. I'd like a small round of applause for them. Your fire commissioners are Chairman Paul Ogier, Eric Pyra, and John Silly, to my right. Treasurer for the fire district is Tim Pearson, and the clerk for the fire district is Stephanie Giovanucci. Fire district budget committee includes, to my left here, Jason Wright from Tilton, Jane Alden from Tilton, Catherine Dawson from Tilton, Kevin Waldron, Charles Broden, and Scott Lewandowski from Northfield, and Commissioner Eric Pyra serves on that as well. Thanks again to the budget committee this year for their service to the fire district. It's much appreciated. It's hard to get people to volunteer. It's even hard to get qualified people to volunteer, so I appreciate their efforts very much. Also, thanks very, very much to the supervisors of the checklist from the towns of Tilton and Northfield. We cannot conduct these meetings without them. Thanks very much for being here. I'd like to introduce our assistant moderators for this evening to help me count votes. From Northfield, it's Paul Blaisdell, and from Tilton, Helen Hanks. They'll give me a hand as we need it. Relatively small assembly this evening, pretty well spread out. I appreciate that very much. Paul will be counting votes on this side of the table. Helen will be counting on this side of the podium, and the supervisors of the checklist. All right, process-wise, please put your cell phones on silent mode if you would, please. That would include me. I wonder what I'll get for calls during this meeting. There you go. I'll recognize someone to speak to the article as soon as we get to the point of having a motion made for the article and a second. I'll recognize somebody to speak to the article. It's generally one of the commissioners. We'll do that before we open for further testimony. All testimony questions must be directed to the moderator. Please present your testimony with courtesy and respect for the entire assembly. If it gets personal, naming names, poorly veiled references to people by title, we'll put a stop to that. Please understand too that when you speak, even if you're asking a question, you're providing testimony. And generally speaking, someone will try to answer the question, but no one is obligated to respond to any testimony. Sometimes nobody knows the answer to a question. So within a reasonable level of decorum here, you can provide whatever testimony that you want. has to respond. In the event of disorderly behavior, per New Hampshire RSA 40:8, there will be a warning issued by the moderator, and if necessary, we'll have the good officer Patton escort you from the premises. I'd like to think that one. It is a violation of state law for anyone to speak at the meeting without being recognized by the moderator. For example, when somebody else has the floor, this is New Hampshire RSA 40:7. Continued offenses will be deemed disorderly behavior. I do get it sometimes, you know, it gets emotional and that kind of thing, but remember that the right to express ourselves and to vote relies on conducting government in a civil manner. I'm going to ask that you limit your testimony to around 3 minutes other than those introducing an article. We do have a fairly full warrant at 18 articles. I'm not suggesting we won't take whatever time it takes here tonight, but ideally we'll try to keep things moving. As moderator, I'll use my best judgment, and if it's obvious there's a point to what you're saying, we'll be courteous, but if things are dragging out, we'll try to ask you to make your point and finish up. You do have to use the microphones when you speak, otherwise it doesn't get recorded, so we have someone taking the minutes, but we're also trying to get a recording. If you have a follow-up question, please request such from the moderator and direct it through the moderator before proceeding. It's definitely not appropriate to have a back and forth on the floor with anyone of the commissioners, anyone, either back and forth. You need to separate that so that we can get a clear understanding of who is speaking. Speaking of which, I'll apologize right up front. If we can't hear you introduce yourself and we don't get it clearly, sometimes I can ask somebody 5 times and I still can't understand what they're saying. And I don't recognize everybody, especially with all these masks. So I may ask one of our assistant moderators to just sort of mosey on over after the fact and get your name so we get it straight for the record. It is my intent, as always, to the extent possible, to hear from those who have yet to speak on an issue before we hear again from those who have already spoken. Motions to call a question must be made by a voter who has been recognized by the moderator to speak. I'm not going to respond to motions called from the Assembly to call a question. You also can't speak to an article or an issue and then call a question. If you'd like to call a question, be recognized by the moderator and do so. And the reason for that is you can't have your say and then call a question and debate. Any decision by the moderator can be challenged by vote of the Assembly and overturned by a simple majority vote. Motions to restrict reconsideration of a vote under RSA 40:10, also referred to as protecting your vote. I'll accept that reference for the intention to restrict reconsideration. I prefer that the motion be made prior to moving to the next article, but it doesn't have to be. It can come later. We talked about the designated space for non-voters. I don't know if there's anyone from the media here tonight. There usually are. If you are clearly from the media and not a representative and you want to mosey about and take pictures, that's okay, but if we ever get to the point of a ballot vote, there's nothing that requires a ballot vote on the warrant tonight, but if we do, it's very important for the folks who are not registered in the district not to mill around and not to have conversations with registered voters. So you stay put or move away or whatever, but that's very important. Same for members of the media if they're here. Okay, generally speaking, we'll try to handle everything with a voice vote initially. If we have a call for a show of hands, or I just can't make a decision based on the voice vote, we will move to when we call a show of hands, we'll be using our cards like we generally do. And I'll have my assistant moderators count as well. Motions to amend an article must be made by a registered voter of the district, must be in writing, and must be signed by the voter making the motion. The motion must also be very clear as to how the article will be amended. I can't tell you how to write your amendment, but sometimes the best thing is just to rewrite the entire article. It's my opinion that there's any possibility whatsoever that an amendment can be alternatively interpreted. I won't accept the motion. That does not mean we won't get to where you want to go. It just might take a little more time. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Each article on the warrant is read in its entirety before being considered. Each article is amended is read by the moderator before a vote. Reading the entire warrant before we get started is something that has become a little less of an expectation. However, I will if somebody would like it. Does anybody want me to read the entire warrant before we start? Seeing none, thank you so much. I shall proceed then with Article 1. Yes.
I wonder if it would be prudent to reorder the warrant and place Article 12 after 17, meaning that the amount in Article 12 is a percentage of the amount in Article 17, and if Article 17 were amended, the amount in Article 12 would be incorrect and would need to be amended.
Okay, are you making a motion to do so?
Can't hear.
Yeah. What he said is that 12 is based on previous year's budget and it's not necessary. You agree? He agrees, okay. All right, moving forward. Article 1, to choose a fire commissioner for the ensuing 3 years, actual voting to be by official ballot on Tuesday, March 9th, 2021, at the annual town voting sessions in Tilton and Northfield at their respective polling places and times. The winner of that election was Eric Park. Article 2, to choose a treasurer for the ensuing 3 years. Again, actual voting done by official ballot on Tuesday, March 9, 2021. The annual town voting sessions in Tilton and Northfield at the respective polling places and times. Winner of that election was Timothy Pearson. And to choose a clerk for the ensuing 3 years. Actual voting to be by official ballot on Tuesday, March 9, 2021. The annual town voting sessions in Tilton and Northfield at their respective polling places and times. We were just writing candidates as there was no one running. We'll take this moment to thank Stephanie for her service as fire district clerk for the last several years. Much, much appreciated. Very competent. However, she chose not to run again this year, so we had just some write-ins, and Camden Steady there she is. And she will be our fire district moving forward for the next 3 years. She was write-in, and she did accept the position. Article 4, to accept. Article 4, to accept the reports of the treasurer and the fire commissioners and pass any vote relating thereto. Is there a motion?
No.
Thank you. Pat, second. Seconded by Caitlin, thank you. Can somebody speak to the article, or do we need to? I don't see anybody who care to comment. So, all right, ready for the vote? Do a voice vote. Those in favor of Article 4 is read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and I so declare. Article 4 passes. Article 5. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the Land and Building Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion? So moved by Kevin, second. Pat, thank you. All right, Paul, if you could address this article, thank you.
Yeah, this is money to put in the Land and Building Fund. At this time, we have $454,917.46 in there.
Thank you, Paul. Further testimony, Article 5. Seeing none, are you ready for the vote? Yes. Okay. Article 5, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the Land and Building Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from... Oh, I'm sorry.
Have a question?
Chuck Mitchell? Yes, please.
Yeah, Chuck Mitchell, Tilton. I hear that there's $454,000 in the unassigned fund balance. If I'm not mistaken, I believe we are asking this group tonight to expend funds, other funds from that, from the unassigned fund balance that would not be an impact on the taxpayers. So I guess I have a little concern with just adding $100,000 in and then subtracting other amounts later.
Thank you, Chuck. Further testimony, Article 5. Yes, Jason.
There is actually, in the handout, there is $626,000 in the unassigned fund balance, and the previous testimony you heard from Commissioner Ogier was that the Land and Building Fund has $454,000 in it. So there was historically, years ago, we used to put $100,000 here and $100,000 there to try to save up for a building, and that fell by the wayside. And in the last couple of years, commissioners wanted to do it through taxes, and in this case, they're looking to do it through the unassigned fund balance. So there's a much larger number in the unassigned fund balance, and the building fund has $454,846.
Thank you, Jason. Further testimony, Article 5. Seeing none, move to the vote. I can't see, and then when I have them ask me, I only get forward. Article 5, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be added to the Land and Building Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Those in favor of Article 5 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I so declare Article 5 passes. Article 6. To see if the district will vote to raise All right, I was remiss in mentioning in my opening statements that we had a presentation from the fire commissioners and the fire chief, and then also from the building committee. Hopefully we'll go quickly, and we're going to start with Mike presenting on the big screen up there. I'll try to get out of the way.
Very good, thank you. So the first slide, as you can see, are the balances for all of the funds that we have in the bank right now. And we kind of went over that in the last warrant article. The next slide, last year we put in service a brand new radio tower off of Shed Road, and that has the fire department radio system in it. It sits behind the Spalding School. Last year in 2020, we did 2,010 emergency incidents, which is a 33% increase over the last 5 years.
I have a quick question on that. On your statistics, I mean, over 5 years ago or over the last 5 years?
Over the course of 5 years. Last year in 2020, we received 400% more ambulance mutual aid than we provided, and I can show you the differences there. So we received 83, and it lists the towns that we received those mutual aid ambulances from, and we gave 20. Total mutual aid received is 186, and total mutual aid given is 134. Type of incidents for the year, as you can see, the big green piece of the pie is 1,332, and that's for EMS and motor vehicle accidents. and the rest of them are so much less. As you can see, we had 102 fires of one type or another. Incident locations. So, as you can see by the pie, there's two great big pieces. The largest piece at 40% is the village district area. And that's where 40% of our incidents are, and that's about a mile radius around the intersection of Park and Main Street in Tilton. The next largest area is the exit 20 area, and that's at 39%. Those numbers keep getting closer and closer as the years go on. I remember when I first arrived here about 7 years ago, it was like 47% in the village district and in the lower 30s for the exit 20 area. The other areas are 14% for west and south of the village district area, and 7% is mutual aid. And then the other area that you can see, well, that's not really an area, 63% of our calls last year were in Tilton, whereas 37% were in Northfield. A pie chart showing the percentage of calls by day, fairly evenly distributed. This year, the busiest day, last year the busiest day was on Saturday at 16%. Last year, the busiest day was Monday. Again, incidents by hour, bar graph, basically showing you that the busiest portion of our day is usually right in the middle of the day. And as you can see, it tapers off on either end as you get closer to midnight. Incidents by age. 65% of all EMS incidents are the age of people of 50 or older. So I'm in that group. Average arrival on scene times. So for the first call, it's 6 minutes and 20 seconds. But that's the entire district. And what that means is from the time the tires start rolling to the time they hit your house is 6 minutes and 20 seconds. If we have another caller at the same time, we have to rely heavily on mutual aid for that second call. So it takes a lot longer for mutual aid to arrive on time, on scene, and that has been averaging 14 minutes and 10 seconds. A good thing to know is that since we've added the 4-person, and it's a small data set, but that second call time has gone down to 8 minutes, 26 seconds. So that's a huge improvement, and I hope that you can see that would continue. And that's it, the end of my report, and Aiden, you're next.
Hi everyone. All right. Can I use your table here, John? Okay. Hi, I'm Caitlin Lounsbury. I am a member of the Fire Station Building Committee. So first I want to start with a caveat that we finished this work over about a year ago. So we had hoped to present more thoroughly the results last year, but with everything that was going on, we decided that, we should really do a more thorough report right now. So I want to start by recognizing the members of the committee. So we had Commissioner John Silly, we had the Chief, we had Captain Tim Ames, we had Lieutenant Tom Boulio, Paul Blaisdell from our budget committee at the time, and Kevin Waldron from the budget committee. And then members of the public, myself, Evan Kate, who's here with me to help me out if I forget anything. Lisa Martin, who couldn't be with us right now because she's in sunny Florida. And Tom Odell. Okay. So we started with 5 directives, basically giving us our task of what we were going to do when we met with each other. The first was that we wanted to evaluate the viability of using Park Street, just the station we had, as a headquarters, as a single station, so just one station at Park Street. The second was to evaluate using Park Street as a headquarters, but adding a substation somewhere else in the district. The third was to evaluate having a headquarters somewhere else in the district, so our big station somewhere else, and keeping Park Street as a substation. We also were asked to evaluate the usability of the station and land at Center Street, and then just to look at the impacts of a student program and potentially additional firefighters in the future. So some important definitions, and we actually went over this quite a bit about what this would entail. We had headquarters is defined as a building that houses apparatus, administrative staff, and is capable of housing career staff. But the difference is that a substation is designed as a building that also houses apparatus and is capable of housing career staff, but wouldn't have our administrative staff there. And so we needed to start with our existing conditions. So we knew that we had 2 stations. They're located about 0.8 miles apart. We have 12 Center Street, and then in Tilton, and then Northfield at 149 Park Street. And they're both in that village district that the chief was just talking about. Okay. I don't think I'm going to read all of this for you, but basically, the Park Street station is on a fairly small piece of land, a little over 2 acres, and it's a wood frame building, and it's some other things. We have equipment here that lists the different equipment that was there. And an important thing to keep in mind is that the Park Street station is not staffed. So most of the call company members report to this station before responding to an incident, but there's no actual staff there that are just stationed there. And at the time of this, there were 11 active call responders, and that's an important point that the chief is probably going to have some updates to these numbers afterwards, because this was a year ago. And then we also knew that at the time that we were looking at the aerial tower lease, so that Wireless Edge was looking to put a tower on this property as well. And then for Center Street, so this is a very old building from 1867 originally on a very tiny piece of land. So that really limits the ability to do this. So you can see 0.14 acres. And so it currently is where our firefighters, the administrative space, and that's our main headquarters, is there in Tilton. And then you can see the equipment listed, and the staffing, which at the time was 12 full-time firefighters, 3 per shift. And so we knew that 99% of our calls at the time were sending either an ambulance or an engine, so that was important to know in terms of where the apparatus should be located. And at the time, and Chief just gave some updated figures, and you can see even in the course of a year there were some changes here that 42% of the calls were within the village district and 36% at exit 20. Okay, so getting to the actual directive, so the first one, if you recall, was to just use Park Street as a headquarters single station. Some of the pros of this are lower cost. We already owned this piece of land in the building. The infrastructure exists, so we didn't have to put in, water and different utilities. We thought that if there was just one location, this might, boost morale and camaraderie with everyone being in one place instead of separated into 2 different places. We checked into whether a traffic light would be required, and it wasn't looking like that would be needed at this location. Similar to having staff at one location, we thought there might be some efficiency in having just one location for the apparatus. It's pretty close to the geographic center of the district, so right in the middle of the 2 towns. And there's also kind of the perceived value of having Park Street. This was built in the 80s. This is something that a lot of people still have a lot of ties to, and it's the first building you really see when you get off of exit 19 in Northfield. For Northfield, the response time would be decreased, and we were able to figure out that having a single story here would accommodate ADA, which currently isn't possible at the Center Street location. Some of the cons, though, that the response time would increase for some of the Tilton calls compared to Center Street. We realized that one station, and just in any location, has pros and cons, so it might not be able to meet the needs of everyone in the district. And just because it's the geographic center doesn't mean that's where all the calls are coming from. So that was a con as well. And then, it's much larger than the Center Street piece of land, but still not unlimited. We were limited on how much we could build there. And this is just a note that we could figure out contracts for continuing service while we did construction. Okay, so the second one was to look at a Park Street station plus a substation somewhere in Tilton, most likely. So the idea was that for the pros, this would improve response time, like we were just talking about, the inverse of what I was saying. We could keep a smaller footprint at Park Street. We knew that most of our current call staff were living closer to Park Street, so they could continue going there, as opposed to moving everything to another location. This again, we could keep a single story to accommodate ADA. Park Street's within the Village District, and so it's that visibility I was talking about being right there off the exit. And yep, so in terms of cons, we would probably need additional staff because we're looking at staffing 2 locations, and so we'd be spreading that out, possibly needing more staff. We did see a decrease over time in the number of call members, and my understanding is that has continued, unfortunately. We also knew that we would duplicate storage and support equipment. So again, having it in 2 different locations, you might have to duplicate certain things. Having 2 stations would increase cost over having a single station. And we'd kind of have the inverse of separating people out at different locations. You'd have the inverse of maybe less camaraderie and less everyone being at one station. And then again, there could be operating expenses, not just in equipment, but in all sorts of things having 2 different facilities. And so in all of this, when we were looking at anything that involved 2 locations, we knew that, especially given the trends, that exit 20 is probably going to be the preferred location if we were to do that. Okay, so a lot of these are going to be the same, because this is the inverse, where we would put a headquarters elsewhere in the district, and then use Park Street as a substation. So you can kind of see that a lot of them are the same. It's just the opposite, like, whether the substation was in one town versus the other. So I'm not going to go over all of them again. But some of the cons, which, another one that we hadn't mentioned before was just, land acquisition. So having to, buy land in another place, which has been a challenge when we've looked at this in the past. And, if we're keeping Park Street, whether it's a substation or it's a headquarters, there's renovation costs of that as well. But perhaps not as much as, new construction of a whole headquarters. And I think most of these are about the same, yeah. Okay. And then we also, again, we're just looking at, can we use this, land and station at Center Street? So yes, it's very old, but what can we do with it? So some of the pros of whatever we decide to do with it is we own the building. It's located in the Village District. Maybe we could use it as storage. We can continue using it as is during construction of any other, buildings, or we could, sell it in the future. However, some of the cons of continuing to operate out of these 2 locations is that they're very close to each other. So you're not really having a benefit of having 2 spread out locations when they're so close. Also, the Center Street location is very, very old, and it's not really appropriate for housing staff. It doesn't meet ADA requirements. We're really limited on what we can do here because of the lot size, and it's really difficult to get out of there onto Main Street. And then we were asked to kind of look towards the future. So what would happen if we had either additional firefighters or a student program? And really all that we could say about this was, the square foot it would need for spacing of housing. So we have that here. And then just, you would need more staff, more space in whatever building. Okay, so that's a lot of information. So as of the time, 6 of the 9 of us recommended pursuing Directive 1. So putting Park Street Station as a headquarters single station for the reasons that we went over. Some of the main things that we focused on here was that it is the geographical center of the district. The district owns the property, it's the lowest cost, it really simplifies and shortens the time to complete construction. We have existing infrastructure there in terms of utilities connected to the site. We can put all of the apparatus and gear and staffing at the same location. And we believe this was the best solution for the district as of this time. However, we did want to mention that some of the committee members felt that Directive 3, just a headquarters somewhere else in the district and keeping Park Street as a substation might better meet the current and future needs of the district. So I did want to mention that. And here's just a kind of our potential site plan of what it would look like to kind of make and build out Park Street into a single headquarters. Okay. Kevin, is there anything that you'd like to add? Okay. All right. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. All right, that concludes our two presentations. We are going to pick up at Article 6. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 for the purpose of design, engineering, and architectural fees associated with the construction, addition, and/or renovation of a fire station or fire stations. This special warrant article will be a non-lapsing appropriation per RSA 32:7 Roman 6 and will not lapse until the buildings are completed. The sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Is there a motion? So moved by John, seconded by Paul, Blaisdell, and Paul. Well, I'm sorry, John. Address the Article 6, please.
Hello? All right, good evening, thank you for coming out. So what this is we're looking at, as you heard, trying to get a station built there. With that comes some costs, potential engineering or design build, whichever way you go with that. Site, boring, there's always little things like that that you have to prepare for ahead of time. You just can't come to the public and say, okay, we have this amount of money to build. You kind of have to have an idea, a concept, and where you're going with that. And that's what this is putting available. We had funds before, but they lapsed. They went back into the other funds. So this is putting it there until we figure out where the district is going to go with the station and whatever concept that is eventually determined.
Thank you, John. Further testimony on Article 6. Seeing none, are you ready for the vote? All right, roll the voice vote. Article 6, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 for the purpose of design, engineering, and architectural fees associated with the construction, addition, and/or renovation of a fire station or fire stations. The special warrant article will be a non-lapsing appropriation per RSA 32:7 Roman 6 and will not lapse until the building is completed. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate, recommended by both the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Those in favor of Article 6 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I so declare it. Article 6 passes. Article 7. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 for the purpose of purchasing a piece of land adjacent to 149 Park Street in Northfield labeled as New Parcel A on a plan drawn by Joseph M. Wheatyard, LLS, Incorporated Land Surveyor from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation with said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Is there a motion? Caitlin, second. Paul, thank you. Paul Ogier, can you address this, please?
Yes. during the study there, we found out that we don't own all the land that's showed there. There's a small section, I believe the state owned. And it would be a good idea if we did purchase this, so we could have that whole parcel. And it's the yellow section up there.
Thank you, Paul. Kevin?
Kevin K. Tilton. Could somebody tell me what the planned use of this property is? Other than it's a good idea to own it?
I think with that piece of land there, it would give us enough land to build the station the way we want it. Because like I said, with that little piece missing, I think it's going to interfere with the size of the building.
Thanks, Paul. Kevin?
If I remember correctly from my time on the building committee, we were able to put a 14,000 square foot building on the property that's already existed, owned by fire district, correct?
Yes, we could put that on there, but we are also squeezing everything in there very tightly, and we were very tight on all the equipment also in Center Street. So this would allow a little bit bigger footprint for storage, apparatus, all the parts that we need for the station as well. So it wouldn't be as tight of an engineer fit to squeeze everything into a tiny box. Not saying we have to expand out for gee whiz everything we can, but that 1,400 was really narrowing down everything we could possibly do.
Thank you, John.
What's the square footage at 7th Street?
I don't have the measurement on the top of my head.
Moderator recognizes Caitlin to address the question.
The current station at Park Street is 4,800 square feet in size.
Center Street.
You're asking for the lot size, Kevin, or the size of the building?
Square footage of the building.
Thank you.
Center Street is 5,400 square feet.
So we have 9,000, roughly 10,000 square feet currently. We know we can put a 14,000 square foot building on the lot that we already own. I don't understand how we're squeezing anything.
Thank you, Kevin. Further testimony, Jason, please, and then Helen, and then Kevin.
Jason Wright, Tilton. The question was about, rather than just a good idea. Just a good idea is when you have to consider things you haven't considered: snow storage, drainage plans, future utility shifts or moves or any easements. You don't know what the state has planned for changes and things on the highway too, and sometimes it's good to be your own abutter if you could gain a little larger ground for future, even in just environmentals and, like I said, drainage, runoff, snow. I mean, I don't walk that parcel, but it would be in this district's better interest to control anything that's around it.
Thank you, Jason. Helen.
Thank you, Helen Hanks. Just a question of procedure curiosity. Is this an offer price from the state? We've already gone through the process, giving the legislative body of the state of New Hampshire the authority to sell it to us?
The answer is yes, Frank. Kevin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Kevin LaChapelle from Tilton. I guess the first thing that I see from this presentation on the pie shape is the approach angle from traffic coming from exit 19 and Route 132, and the departure view of the emergency apparatus leaving the apron. Just from past experiences, pulling out off the current apron that we have is already difficult with vehicles that are coming from the 93 area on 132 with the speeds that they have. Now, if we were to own this for $5,000, it seems like short change to me compared to some type of a civil suit. You know, if we were to have a collision with apparatus, $5,000 is really short change compared to the liability that we could potentially own. If someone else owns that property, whether it's the state or whoever may own it, we have no say of what goes there as far as that site distance. So that's my concern.
Thank you, Kevin. Gretchen?
Hi. So my question is, this land that's being offered to be sold to us from DOT, is the land usable? Is it wetlands? Do we have to do any remediation, anything? If we need to build, we can just build. We know that.
Yes.
We know that. We've done the research on that. And you say yes, we've done that.
Yes, we've done all the research on it. We've had the surveys there where the wetlands have been delineated. And if I know it's not very good depiction of what it is really there, but if you're standing in front of the Park Street Fire Station, we own up to, on the left-hand side, the Smoky Bear sign. Everything to the left of the Smoky Bear sign is state land. So what we're looking to do is, with this $5,000, purchase that land to the left of the Smoky Bear sign, all the way to the culvert that goes underneath Route 132, and that's where the wetlands line really begins.
Thank you, Rick.
So it's all the land what we've been mowing for all these years, but never owned.
Okay, so you're saying the wetlands begins where up there?
So can you see the curving line?
Yeah.
That's the wetland line.
And just so you know, DOT pulled out everything. They're not doing anything. They can pull out the plan. It ain't going back on the plan because there's no money. And that's what they told the town of Northfield 4 or 5 years ago when they pulled off maybe doing on and off ramps so you can go into each direction. It's off the plan. So there's nothing being done.
Thank you, Gretchen. Further testimony, Article 7. Seeing none, we'll try a voice vote. Article 7, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 for the purpose of purchasing a piece of land adjacent to 149 Park Street in Northfield, labeled as New Parcel A on a plan drawn by Joseph M. Weichard, LLS Incorporated Land Surveyor from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, with said funds to come from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Those in favor of Article 7 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes have it. The moderator is not in doubt. Article 7 passes. Article 8. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,499 for the purpose of adding to the existing fire prevention expendable trust fund, with said funds to be withdrawn from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Is there a motion? Motion by Pat, second by Caitlin. Eric Powell, do you address this, please?
Hello, all right, thank you. These are funds that are generated through the inspections that the department performed during the year 2020. We remove these funds every year from the general fund and place them into the Fire Prevention Expendable Trust Fund, and it ties into the next article, which is the purchase. But these are just taking the funds out of the general fund and placing them into the Fire Prevention Expendable Trust Fund.
Thank you, Eric. Further testimony, Article 8. Chuck.
Chuck Mitchell Tilton, as amused, how do you come up with the $499 instead of $10,500? If anyone could answer that, it's a miracle. Thank you.
Eric?
That's the total of the revenue that was generated.
Thank you, Eric. Further testimony, Article 8. Seeing none. Article 8, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,499 for the purpose of adding to the existing Fire Prevention Expendable Trust Fund, with said funds to be withdrawn from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Those in favor of Article 8 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and so declare Article 8 passes. see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $7,085 for the purpose of purchasing materials, tools, and equipment related to public education, code enforcement, training, etc., with said funds to be withdrawn from the Fire Prevention Expendable Trust Fund. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion? Pat, second. Paul, thank you. Eric.
All right. So this is the approving the purchase of materials, tools, and equipment that is needed to run the fire prevention program for the year 2021. These funds are used in schools, the senior center, and other training programs that the department does, whether it's with a business or other place, and they also service the elderly that are in need.
Thank you, Eric. Further testimony, Article 9. Gretchen.
Hey, I found it difficult with the budget form that we used this year, because it's new, it may be improved, but I found it very difficult to track things. So is there a fund balance right now, say before the 10,000 and that account?
I have that.
Okay. And what? No? No?
Okay. Yep. Currently in that account, before we put any money in there this evening, there was $22,766.22. They also, the leftover money, it builds up that fund, and the goal is that at some point the current fire prevention trailer that we have and use will need replacement, and they'll use that to replace that trailer without affecting the tax rate.
Thank you, Eric. Further?
Yeah, okay, thanks. So when I'm reading this, it says code enforcement, training. Training of our staff is what that line means. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Further testimony, Article 9. Seeing none. Article 9, see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $7,085 for the purpose of purchasing materials, tools, and equipment related to public education, code enforcement, training, etc., with said funds to be withdrawn from the Fire Prevention Expendable Trust Fund. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee, and majority vote is required. There's a voice vote here. Those in favor of Article 9 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, I so declare it. Article 9 passes. Article 10. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 for the purpose of adding to the existing health insurance deductible expendable trust fund, with said funds to be withdrawn from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion? Pat. Second. Paul, thank you. Paul Ogier, please.
Okay, all we're doing is put money back into that fund there that's been taken out. What it actually does is it reduces the health insurance and rates on the health insurance by having the deductible in there.
Thank you, Paul. Further testimony, Article 10.
Current balance, what's the total balance in that fund?
Question is current balance.
Current balance is, as of end of February, $3,116.30.
Thanks, Eric. Further testimony, Article 10. Seeing none. Article 10, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 for the purpose of adding to the existing health insurance deductible expendable trust fund, with said funds to be withdrawn from the unassigned fund balance. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and Budget Committee. Majority vote required. Those in favor of Article 10 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I so declare Article 10 passes. Article 11. To see if the district will vote to establish a communications tower expendable trust fund per RSA 31:19-A, where 50% of the tower revenue from the previous year shall be used to offset the operating budget in the following year, and 50% of the tower revenue shall be used to offset costs for repairs, maintenance, construction costs, and bonds of fire stations, radio communication infrastructure, and to raise and appropriate $1 to put in the fund, with this amount to come from the unassigned fund balance. Further, to name the Board of Commissioners as agents to expend from said fund. Future funding will come from the communication tower income collected. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee majority vote required. Is there a motion? Pat, second? Paul, thank you. Where's Jerry? All right, so Eric Pyro, please.
Yeah. This is for the proposed tower that is going to go on the Park Street location. The project has received zoning board approval from the town of Northfield. We're scheduled to perform before the Northfield Planning Board on April 5th. The anticipation is that once the plan is approved, that the tower should be built and generated by the fourth quarter of 2021. So therefore, we would need to be able to have that fund set up so that we could put the revenue in there.
Thank you, Eric, for the testimony, Article 11. Richard.
Mr. Moderator.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so a tower, kind of new to me. Does this thing come with a warranty?
Mike?
We don't own the tower. We lease the land on which the tower is constructed. And we generate revenue from rent that the tower owner, or AT&T or Verizon, whoever goes on that tower. So it doesn't have a warranty, but we do have a lease.
Okay, so the tower isn't going to be ours to maintain. The money coming in for the radio is for our equipment on the tower. We're not responsible for the actual tower because it's just on our land and we're making money from it. Is that correct?
Yes, we're making money from it. The radio stuff that's on the tower that belongs to us, they are placing on the tower for us for free during the process.
Okay.
They're also giving us a shelter at the bottom, and an emergency generator to power our equipment during power failure. And then for every tenant that's on the tower, we collect, for the first rent is $17,000 per year. And then for every tenant after that, we collect 40% of the total rent of what they are charged for the annual year. So as more tenants go on the tower, the rent goes up.
Okay.
Also, there's a built-in increase in rent on a per annum basis of, I think, 2.5%.
Okay, so
All of it.
the generator that's going to be in the building that they're going to give us, do we have that generator?
No, they're giving it to us.
Oh, they're going to give that to us?
Yes.
Okay, so that money to do anything with the generator would come out of this fund as well? The preventive maintenance or anything with that, would that come out of this?
It could, yes. As written, it could come.
Okay, I just didn't, I want to make sure that it's kind of like on the record, because when this comes up in 3-4 years ago, we never discussed it. Anything that's tied to that piece of equipment, so that money is also usable for the other tower up the 140?
As it's written, it's for radio infrastructure. So I'm not sure the tower itself is radio infrastructure, but radio infrastructure generally in the radio business are base stations, antennas, microwave units, that type of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you, Mike. Further testimony, Article 11. Kevin.
Thank you. I think this is the third year in a row we've tried to put the cart before the horse on this trust fund. Oh, it's not a trust fund, I apologize. It's a special revenue fund, I guess is what it really is. 3 years ago, we didn't have a tower, but we wanted an account. 2 years ago, we didn't have a tower, we wanted an account. Guess what? We don't have a tower, we still want an account. I don't support the creation of another revenue fund because our history shows that we use them as a reason to buy something rather than using the money for something we actually need. Also, we're told that purchases from these accounts don't affect the tax rate, which is true. But what we're we're not told is that absent these accounts, the revenue could be used for operational costs of the district, which would affect your tax rate. They don't tell us less tax money would be required without these funds hoarding the money for their wish lists. I believe that we're not told this because it's much easier to get you to agree to buy something if they can tell you it doesn't affect the tax rate. However, it should be obvious I don't favor the creation of this fund. However, if you do, I think we should do it a different way. And I have an amendment to Article 11.
Okay. I'll read this. I'll just make a point of process. I appreciate you giving the explanation. Probably the more appropriate thing would be to propose the amendment and then speak to it. But it's my fault. I didn't know what he was doing, so I didn't say it. No worries. All right, so Kevin is proposing an amendment to Article 11. Are you proposing that this this replaces all of the language that's currently on the warrant for Article 11?
It changes the amount and remove bonds.
No, but this amendment as written replaces the language that's in the warrant. Yes, okay. So there's a proposed amendment to Article 11 that replaces all of the language that's currently on the warrant with the following: to see if the district will vote to establish a communications tower expendable trust fund per RSA 31:19-a, where 70% of the tower revenue from the previous year shall be used to offset the operating budget in the following year, and 30% of the tower revenue shall be used to offset costs for repair, maintenance, construction costs of fire stations and radio communication infrastructure, and to raise and appropriate $1 to put in the fund, with this amount to come from the unassigned fund balance. Further, to name the Board of Commissioners as agents to expend from said fund. Future funding will come from the communication tower income collected. Is there a motion? All right, so we have a motion. Is there a second to that? Second, Catherine Boston. Right, so Kevin spoke to that proposed amendment. Is there further testimony on this? Paul, please.
Paul Blaisdell from Northview. Could you just highlight what the difference is between the amendment, I'm sorry, Mr. Wallner. Could you please address what the difference is between your amendment and the actual article as presented on the board?
It takes, it's originally written to put 50% in the operating budget. I changed that to 70%.
And that's the only difference?
No, it also removes the word bonds, which indicates we are going to borrow money, which I think is a bit premature. I think if we do what the fire station committee has recommended, we can do this mostly without borrowed money.
Paul, okay. I'm sorry, Paul. You good? Thank you. Further testimony? This is related to the amendment. Article 11.
You brought up, and I don't know if this is where you can't hear you.
Yeah. Please.
Oh my gosh, you never said that, So my question is, because I'm a little confused, I understand, I kind of heard what you said. We have done this every year, put this warrant article in, not have the tower. Put the warrant article, not have the tower. When is this tower going to be built? If we go and have this built at the end of 21? So if this warrant article, this article does not go through, we could propose this next year and we'd still be in good shape? Or either way with the bond, either way with the verbiage?
So if the tower is built this year, revenue will be coming in this year, and if we do not have this warrant article, 100% of that revenue will go into the general fund with no designation. And it'll be you could use it next year for whatever. With this in place, then we can start using the money, whether it's in the amended version or the current version, to offset the operating budget for next year and dedicating towards any equipment costs or infrastructure costs for either the fire station or if we need a new base station for a radio or something like that.
But you said it would be built at the end of the last quarter of 21, correct?
That's my understanding. When I talked to Wireless Edge last week, their plan is to go before the planning board April 5th. Monday, the first Monday in April.
Yeah.
And they expect that once they get their approval there, that they've already done borings and everything else, they're ready to go.
Thank you, Mike. Just before I recognize you again, Paul, anybody else would like to speak to the amendment to Article 11 before I recognize Paul again? Paul, please.
Just a quick question. So the difference is the amount of revenue going into the two different aspects of the fund. The second change is eliminating putting any money or using any money for the construction of bonds for a new fire station. And the reasoning for that is that you feel that that money is available elsewhere, or we won't need the bond for a fire station. So my question is we know we're going to have to put a new fire station in at some time. Why don't we take money from this income source and put it into the fund to allow us to reduce the amount of money that we have to borrow for a fire station? Because we are going to need a new fire station. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Pat, please.
I'm confused a little bit here now, but can you reread the section where it talks about the bond? Because I believe you read the amendment with construction costs fire, and the word bond was removed, not the word construction costs.
Right. As it reads, it follows right through to the point of the original article to construction costs, and that is included in the amendment. And it just removes "and bonds" from that sentence, if I read this correctly. So it says construction costs of fire stations and radio communication, and no reference to bonds. Thank you, Pat. Further discussion on the amendment? Yes, Mike.
Through you to Kevin. So if we were to do a fire station next year, if everything goes appropriately, Kevin, you don't think we're going to need to have a bond to construct a fire station?
Do you want to follow? Okay. But, okay. That was one. Kevin, please.
I think if done right, I don't see this happening next year anyway. I believe if done right, in the right way, we could spend a lot less than most people think and borrow a lot less than most people think.
Thank you, Kevin. Further testimony regarding the amendment, proposed amendment to Article 11. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I guess my confusion lies with the fact of the commissioners and the chief have been working on this project and planning. They have a lot of key components in place. And based on Mr. Waldron's testimony that he just said, unless he can clarify for me, it just seems like his vision is arbitrary and there is no plan moving with the 70 and the 30%. I guess I'm erring on the side of the commissioners and the chief have been working on it. His thoughts are somewhat arbitrary.
Thank you, Kevin. Further testimony related to the proposed amendment to Article 11. Okay, seeing none, so I'm going to read the proposed amendment again, and we'll vote on that. proposed amendment to Article 11 to see if the district will vote to establish a communications tower expendable trust fund per RSA 31:19-a, where 70% of the tower revenue from the previous year shall be used to offset the operating budget in the following year, and 30% of the tower revenue shall be used to offset costs for repairs, maintenance, construction costs, fire stations, and radio communication infrastructure, and to raise and appropriate $1 to put in the fund, with this amount to come from the unassigned fund balance, further to name the Board of Commissioners as agents to expend from said fund. Future funding will come from the communication tower income collected. Those in favor of the proposed amendment to Article 11, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Moderator is not in doubt. The proposed amendment to Article 11 fails, so declare it. So we're back to the original language for Article 11 in the warrant. Further testimony on that.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes, Kevin.
it should be clear that this tower still faces hurdles for approval. It has somehow garnered the ZBA approval. My understanding it's got to go before planning, which is not a shielding. If this does get approved in April, and if they build in the third quarter of 21, not going to be much money to worry about in 21. And again, we still could end up having an account with no tower. Appropriate thing to do is let the tower go up if it's going to, and when you have that income, you decide what you do with it, not before.
Thank you, Kevin. Further testimony, Article 11. Helen and Kevin.
Helen Hanks, Tilton, just a clarification on a reference to bond in the warrant. Is there a cap on the amount that can be bonded based on building this trust, or is that bond authority giving you general bond authority in the warrant?
Payments from the account towards a bond. So if we were to borrow money and bond that money towards a fire station, money from this account could be applied towards that bond payment to help reduce the tax rate for the taxpayers of the fire district in that particular year, whatever the commission decided to take out of that fund to put towards a bond payment during that year.
So I wasn't voting on, it's just to use the money to pay toward a bond, not authority to go get a bond, so we would expect to have after the designs and additional cost figures.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Kevin.
Kevin Keith Tilton. Forgive me, I have a number of questions because I'm really confused. Earlier testimony talked about maintaining the tower that we don't own. So I guess my first question is, we don't own the tower, correct? Okay. And the structure, the fence, the generator, none of that is the fire district's responsibility, correct?
The only responsibility that the fire district has is once the equipment, the fence is not ours, but we have an equipment shelter and a generator that is being given to us in this deal. We will be responsible for that maintenance of the shelter and the generator thereafter. Was there another part to your question?
Oh, yeah. So the way I read it, it says that 50% of the tower revenue shall be used to offset the operating budget of the following year. I'm going to keep it simple. We get $1 this year in revenue. That means next year there's $1 that goes into the operating budget, or as you guys have been saying, the general fund.
No, 50 cents would go into the operating budget.
Okay, 50 cents.
What's the operating budget? 50 cents would go.
The district's operating budget.
Yes.
Okay. The other 50% is going to be used for
repairs, maintenance, construction costs, and bond for fire stations, radio communication infrastructure, am I correct? So the other 50 cents might go toward building a fire station or fixing the generator.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Further testimony, Article 11. All right, seeing none, I'm going to read this tongue-twistiest of articles. To see if the district will vote to establish a communications tower expendable trust fund per RSA 31:19-a, where 50% of the tower revenue from the previous year shall be used to offset the operating budget in the following year, and 50% of the tower revenue shall be used to offset costs for repairs, maintenance, construction costs, and bonds of fire stations, radio communication infrastructure, and to raise and appropriate $1 to put in the fund, with this amount to come from the unassigned fund balance. Further, to name the Board of Commissioners as agents to expend from said fund. Future funding will come from the communication tower income collected. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Majority vote required. Those in favor of Article 11 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. Moderator is not in doubt. Article 11 passes. I so declare. Article 12, to see if the district will vote to establish a contingency fund per RSA 31:98-a and raise and appropriate $23,274 to put in the fund. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. Any appropriation left in the fund at the end of the year will lapse to the general fund. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and Budget Committee. Majority vote required. Is there a motion? Pat, second. Paul, sorry. All right, Eric, please.
Yeah, this fund is basically used to put money aside for any district shortcomings. If we don't use the funds, they lapse right back into the general fund at the end of the year.
Thanks, Eric. Further testimony, Article 12.
Define shortcomings. That's kind of big. Are we talking boiler repairs? We're not talking payroll issues, are we?
It could be used for unexpected repair, something that we didn't expect. It could be to a piece of equipment, it could be to, yeah, I don't know either. So, it could be a piece of equipment or something within the one of the buildings happens, just have a boiler or water tank or something.
This money would be used instead of getting a, is a TN, is that the right term, TN? No, okay. So it's just, instead of getting a line of credit.
It's got to be pretty because you got
Yeah, if we're going to provide a response, you got to use the microphone, Jason, sorry.
Oh, I missed all that. So there is, you have to report to DRA, so it's not just willy-nilly, you know, because it just seems so vague.
Unanticipated expenses.
Okay, unexpected expenses.
Unanticipated expenses that may occur during the year.
Okay. Still seems vague.
Thank you, Gretchen. Pat, please.
Thank you, Pat Constantine from Tilton. I am never in favor of contingency fund in my past practice. 12 years as a selectman, it's usually used as a slush fund, and it's way too easy to just say, oh, we can take it from here. It's like, we got it, let's spend it. I'm not in favor of this contingency fund at all.
Thank you, Pat. Further, I see Kevin. Oh, I'm sorry. Catherine, sorry. You look real full.
The Department of Revenue Administration has a process in place. If there is a need for spending, catastrophic, boiler goes, building burns up, they petition the Department of Revenue Administration for those monies.
So we have to ask them first.
We have, so it's a process. They have to go to the budget committee. The budget committee has to say, agree. And then they go to the Department of Revenue and say, we need money out of the unassigned fund balance because the boiler blew up. We have to replace the boiler. We didn't finance for it.
So there's not a whole way of approval, right? We can take that before they can write about it.
Well, yeah, there's two. The commissioners come to the budget committee, then they go to the DRA. The DRA very seldom says no if it's a truly needed expense.
Thank you, Catherine. Kevin?
Kevin Keith, understand that last year, 2020, without this fund, the chief asked for permission from the commissioners, and they granted it to go to the budget committee to then ask the DRA to overspend the group budget by $25,000. The commissioners approved that. I don't believe that it ever occurred. Why do we need this fund? And my understanding of the way that the bylaws are written, that if there's money in a fund, the commissioners are the ones who decide whether they can spend it or not. And perhaps I'm wrong, but I don't see how we can have a fund approved by the voters to be used by the commissioners who are the stewards of our tax dollars, to then have to ask permission of the budget committee and the DRA. My understanding was that if we wanted to overspend the budget with money that was not available, that was when the permission had to be asked.
Thank you, Kevin. Jason, please.
The overspend request that was put to the commissioners and then to the budget committee was specifically in the area of vehicle repairs and maintenance and things. It was tied to vehicles because we, at the budget committee, we cut the number and the rolling stock was not in healthy condition, so there was a specific ask to spend on vehicle maintenance. Some of us didn't feel that that was a contingency type fund thing, and that wouldn't have been a fair use of a contingency fund, so two separate conversations. I would say historically this contingency fund has been set up every year in the 1% of the previous year, and I don't think it's been used that I can recall. I haven't been on the budget committee since its inception. So DRA had the plan or has the process to set this fund up. I don't think it's ever been tapped into because I don't think anything has been catastrophic. But in the specific request last year about putting the commissioners and then the budget committee together, it was tied to vehicle repair and maintenance.
Thank you, Jason. Further testimony, Article 12. Seeing none, Article 12, to see if the district will vote to establish a contingency fund per RSA 31:91-a and raise and appropriate $23,274 to put in the fund. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance. Any appropriation left in the fund at the end of the year will lapse to the general fund. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. We'll try a voice vote first. Those in favor of Article 12 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. I'll tell you what, I'm somewhat in doubt, so I'm going to ask the assistant commissioners to approach the podium here. So we're going to ask you to raise your orange cards when appropriate. So Helen, you've got this, and that gentleman over here, David. You have the supervisor, the checklist, before you get everything on the side. All right, those in favor of Article 12 as read, please hold up your cards now, your orange cards. Those opposed to Article 12 as read, please hold up your orange cards now. Thank you. All right, it was total votes in favor 20, opposed 17. Article 12 passes, so declared. Article 13, to see if the district will vote to authorize the commissioners. Sorry.
It is now. I'd like to move to protect the vote.
On Article 12.
On Article 12.
Okay. Is there a second to that? Second by Caitlin Lonsberry. All right. The motion was to protect the vote on Article 12 per RSA 40:10. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, we'll try a voice vote. Those in favor of protecting your vote on Article 12, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Moderator is not in doubt. That motion passes. Article 13, to see if the district will vote to authorize the commissioners to enter into a 5-year agreement beginning January 1st, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2025 in the amount of $629,942 for the purpose of providing pressurized hydrant services necessary for the fire suppression and raise and appropriate the annual cost of $125,988 for this year. This agreement contains an escape clause and is a special warrant article. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is not recommended by the Budget Committee. A majority vote is required. Is there a motion? Motion by John, seconded by Paul. John, can you speak this, please?
All right. So this is the contract that we had has expired and we're up for a renewal. This is a 5-year contract at the rate of $125,988 for the pressurized hydrant with the Tilton Northfield Water District. This is to have the pressurized hydrant set up for firefighter response, fire emergency response with water supply. That's the intent of the article. This year, when we negotiate the contract, one of the things we did make sure is that there is an escape clause in this one, so we're not guaranteed locked into the 5-year. So if for some reason something changes next year or down the road with water carrying capacity or some nature, there is an option at that point. We are not obligated and locked in for the full 625. We are contracted at this rate for 5 years.
Thank you, John. Paul, please.
Paul Blaisdell, Northfield. What, in there being very specific, what will trigger the escape clause?
What will trigger the escape clause is if the voting population here votes it down. If you vote it down for next year, then it's only for this year. So the voters are the ones who decide how long we stay in this 5-year contract.
You want to follow on that, Paul?
Yeah, very, very quick. Excuse me, Chris. What happens if we don't agree to the contract? What if we say we're not going to pay it?
All right, so the downside to losing the hydrant system. There's a few cons out there. There's a potential that the Tilton Northfield Water District will have to make up that cost of their hydrant system somehow. That could be a cost that might go to the taxpayers. Another possibility is that they may charge us for usage, and the rate there was going to be much more higher each time we used it based on usage for emergencies. There are RSAs that say we can use the water if it's available, but they can also charge us for that. And without the contract, they can charge at whatever rate they want to, and we would be obligated to that. Another downside to this is our ISO insurance for the district is impacted on water availability throughout the district. So now your available water in a pressurized district and the area immediately around it, you get a much better insurance rating. If you lose that, then now you are going to be an increased on your personal insurance on your home insurance. There are other options out there for water transport. Some people have talked about additional tankers where we could do that. The tankers are an opportunity, they would save you money, it's that you pay the cost, and it's another apparatus you have to maintain. On top of that, now you have to house another apparatus that we would have to buy, which when it gets here 2 or 3 years, oops, that means we need more garage space for station space. And on top of that, you require more operators. A tanker operations and rural water supply, if you have enough tankers, you can have adequate water supply for your fire flow. If you do not, then you may run out of water while waiting for that fire to go out. So you could have 1 to 2 operators operating that tanker in a round robin with other tankers from mutual aid, but then that's taken from our manpower that's inside actually fighting the fire. And we are in a restricted or reduced personnel because the call force has gone down, and you only have so many of the full-time that might come on a call back. Does that help?
Thank you, John. Gretchen, please.
Okay, I think one point of clarification is you said if we don't pay this, as if we decide to not pay the 5-year contract, it'll be passed on to the taxpayers. The cost will be passed on to the water district users, the rate users, not the taxpayers. I personally don't live in the village, don't have a hydrant. I do have Noakes Pond in my area. So I'm not one of those people that has a hydrant and has that wonderful fee on their insurance. It is what it is. It's where I chose to live. So I guess my question about this fee that we're paying each and every year, I think it's 10% of their budget. We give them 10% of the budget. That's the way it's always been. My question is, what do we get? Are we getting the pressurized hydrant report still saying that, because at one point we were painting them and we knew, the gallons, the flow, red, green, yellow, whatever. Are we still getting that report? And are they planning on improving anything in the system? Yeah.
So my discussion with the water district, they plan on improving something every year, whether it's the pipes in the ground or adding fire hydrants as they extend lines. What they also provide us is the pressurized water, which we use probably maybe 4 or 5 times a year. We use those fire hydrants for firefighting purposes to put out fires.
We don't use them to fill our trucks or anything. We're not using the hydrants for that, are we?
We fill our trucks usually back at the fire station through a larger supply line than drinking water, like at your house.
So we pay for that though? We pay for that for the gallon going in?
We don't pay for any of the gallons.
Okay, so there's no meter? Okay.
There's no meter to fill. Well, actually, there is a meter, but we don't pay for it because the water department has to account for gallons produced and gallons lost. And if they don't account for gallons lost, then there could be leaks that they don't know about. So that's why they have to. There is a meter, but we do not get charged for filling the fire trucks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Kevin,
Kate Tilton. I think the chief may have already answered one of my questions, but your report said that we responded to 102 fires last year. And out of those 102 fires, how many did we use a hydrant to fight?
4 or 5. I don't remember the exact amount. It's about average 4 or 5 a year, though.
That's $100,000 a fire over 5 years. It's $25,000 per fire per year.
Yes, you're right. I agree with you. So one of the
there was a question.
We got there's 102 fire hydrants between the 2 towns, and I know that because I asked. So the folks who live in Northfield, you guys only have 40 hydrants. You get it shortchanged. Those of us who live in Tilton, we have 62. Those are the public hydrants. If you're concerned about major fires, like at the outlets or at Home Depot, they have their own hydrants. They're not public hydrants, they're privately owned, they're owned by whoever owns the buildings that houses those companies. So for us to spend $25,000 per fire for water is ludicrous. There are other ways. We can meter, right? We need to use the water, we can meter it. Commissioner Silly alluded to the fact that there are RSAs, well, it's RSA 154, I looked it up and I read it, that says that we can use those water supplies in the case if we need to fight a fire. We can build cisterns. We can't buy another truck. You guys love to buy trucks. We'll go buy another truck. Spending $600,000. How much did we spend? What was the last 5-year contract?
Same amount.
Really? Come on. You guys have known for 5 years that this contract was coming up, and nobody planned ahead. Nobody said, let's start building a cistern a year or 2 cisterns a year. Let's plan so that we can get out of this and we can save the taxpayers $600,000. That's one of the reasons why I ran against you after fire.
Thank you, Kevin. Before Paul speaks, I'm going to recognize Kevin. So, Paul, I'd like to get back in. I'd like to give others an opportunity. Go ahead.
We've spent a tremendous amount of money for water we don't use. We've spent over $2 million for water that we don't use in the past 17 years that I've lived in Northfield. Now we're being asked for another $600,000. We've been fed every excuse under the sun to keep spending this money. Commissioner Silly ran down a pretty nice list of them previously. We've heard that we need it. Well, no we don't. But if we do, in an emergency, with or without an agreement, we can use it. Many people have said here tonight, RSA allows it. We've been told that the water district's debt load is what it is because they've been building their infrastructure to include fire suppression. I got no idea who asked them to do that, but I don't recall in any of my 17 years with this meeting that it came here and asked us what we wanted. Whether that's true or not, the water district debt load is not the fire district's problem. The people who use the the people who use the water district's water are the ones that should be paying the debt. The vast majority of residents in the fire district live outside the area served by hydrants. If you live outside that area, the only hydrant water you're going to get, if you have a fire, is what's in the trucks as they leave the station. It's more than likely that water coming in after that will be shuttled from a remote water source or mutual aid tankers. Even the chief, now this is important, even the chief has said publicly, we have adequate water on wheels for our needs. If we're going to buy water, and I think if we use it, we should pay for it. That's the right thing to do. We'd be smarter to measure and use for what we pay. Where else do you go and pay for something you don't use? $2 million bucks. $2 million bucks. Now they want another 600,000. It's 2.6 million total. Think about how else we could have spent that 2.6 million. How many fire engines and ambulances is that by? If we had spent half that money on a station 12 years ago, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in today with Center Street. Bottom line, folks, is we need to be a lot smarter with our money. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Mark Hebert, Northfield. You guys mentioned that if the water is needed and we aren't paying into this, that we're allowed to use it and or to be metered. Did they ever give us a gallon price if it were to us pay per gallon when we need it?
Is that a question, Mark? Were you asking?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, sorry.
How much per gallon would they charge us if we did this contract?
What their alternative proposal to us was that if we did not have a contract, that they were going to use their water rate study and just charge us a new fee per hydrant, which is somewhere near $400 and something per quarter. Well, $1,200 a year per fire hydrant and just start sending us the bill. And if we didn't pay the bill, then they would initiate a court action. But they were not going to charge us per gallon used at the fire.
So if we don't enter in this contract, they're gonna charge us a fee anyways, and then take us to court if we don't wanna pay it, when we can tap into them if we absolutely need to. That sounds like it's something they cannot do.
That's my understanding from their statements, but.
I mean, we have our wonderful attorney, does RSA allow them to take us to court to pay for things we don't have to pay?
I'm going to recognize the Fire District's Attorney Paul Fitzgerald to try to respond to Mark's question. That's good. I just got to look up.
Thank you. The short answer to your question, can they take you to court? The answer is yes. But I think the real question is, who's going to win? And I gave up predicting that a long time ago, but I will tell you this, that under the laws of the state of New Hampshire and under regulations from the PUC, if a utility provides the ability to access their services, they can't charge for just the access alone. So there is some precedent for the position that the commissioners are taking.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else care to provide testimony on Article 13?
Kent, I just have a clarification.
A clarification from Mike, and then we'll recognize Scott.
So Mr. Waldron stated that I said we had all the water we needed on wheels. That's kind of a misrepresentation of what I said. I said we have enough water on wheels to maintain our current ISO rating in the out of fire hydrant district. I never once said we have enough water to put out any of the fires that we have.
Good. Thank you, Mike. Scott, please.
Turn this thing on, there we go. So if you guys look, this is actually the only thing that the Budget Committee did not recommend out of all the warrant articles. We had a lot of discussion about this particular issue, and we kind of are running into the same roadblocks that you guys were. We didn't get a lot of answers to the contract. We invited people from the water district to explain their contract, and nobody wanted to. So I personally feel as well that this number, a couple things scare me when the only answer you get back is, this is the way we've always done things, and this is the same contract we've had for years with no justification. I do think we should be paying a fee. However, I don't think it should be $125,000. So without a lot of justification from the water department on maybe a more reasonable number, that's kind of why at least I was opposed to it. So I don't know how we get to that point tonight, because obviously we're not going to get to that fair number, in my opinion, tonight without more experts weighing in. But at least that's kind of where we were coming from. And I agree with a lot of others that just the number that you see here is just way too high for kind of what we're getting.
Thank you, Scott. Right. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet that would like to speak to Article 13? Okay, I'm going to recognize Paul first. He's been waiting a bit, and then Gretchen and Kevin.
Thank you, Gretchen. Paul Whitesell from Northfield. So as I was standing here earlier, a question came to mind. What if we don't pay? And it sounds like that's been answered. So what I'm really concerned about is the arbitrary nature of the chief, for instance, said that it would be $1,200 per year per hydrant. Mr. Kate stated that there were 104 hydrants. That works out to be about $125,000. So it sounds to me like they're ending up at the same number, just coming at it from two different directions. So I'm really concerned about how the commissioners feel that this is sustainable. And just a final note, it seems like we hooked onto the hydrant system a couple times last year and the water mains failed. Sounds to me like the water district is using us to pay for maintenance on their system. If their system can't support the vehicles pumping water out of the hydrants, why are we paying for that? Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Gretchen, please.
I think most of everybody in the room knows me, but been on the budget committee. I have met with PUC. In the meeting with PUC, I had the water director, and at the time there was a couple of commissioners that came to the meeting. And essentially what came down to this meeting is the Tilton Northfield Water District bought the water company from Mooney, was that right? Okay, from the private owners. And they need that money. They were giving guidance, the word is guidance from PUC, that they could get revenue for the hydrants. So when they get the revenue for the hydrants, basically and essentially the number has not changed. 10% of our budget was going towards 10% of their budget. And we've had problems in the past with not having the gallons per minute coming out of the hydrants. We've also hooked up to hydrants and they've been dry or whatever. This is not something I'm familiar with, but I would be, I guess, sad to find out that my house is burning and there's no water coming out of the hydrant and we're paying $125,000. I've also complained in the past about our firefighters going out and clearing the hydrants during the snowstorms because, and I get it, gentlemen, it's nothing stupid. I get you have to get to the hydrants. Where are the people of the water district? They have 4 or 5 people on payroll, and we have what, up to four people on shift? Huh. You know what? I know that if I buy something and I'm going to pay out money, I want to get services. So yeah, I want this at home too, people. If I buy something, I want my money's worth. I work hard for my money. But when you see cars during the snowstorm and they're all sitting in the office and no one is doing the snow removal and our guys are out in our trucks, and if they get hurt, it's our workman's comp. And if our trucks get hit, it's our insurance and our trucks being out. And I get it, it's a catch-22. We don't clear the snow and we need to get to it. It's just every year we have the same conversation, people. And I'm sorry, I get a little, my back will get stiff if someone threatens me with a call. We're going to take a call. You know what? At this point, go for it.
Thank you, Gretchen. Kevin, please. Jason. Yeah.
I couldn't let it go. I'm not a fan either, and I live right across the street from a really nice, shiny, brand new red hydrant, but it was about this time last year that a bunch of those things were frozen solid. And not that there's a season for more likely to have a fire or less likely, but you know, you're thinking wood stove season, space heater season, right in the thick of winter, right? And they had frozen equipment. Now, I don't recall if the fire district got a rebate, a refund, a warranty, or even a greeting card saying, hey, sorry about we didn't provide, we weren't there for you. But what they did do was once they thawed the hydrant, they sent my property a water hammer that blew my 2-inch main to smithereens and left 6 tenant families behind me without water for a little while. So quantity, quality, I have questions too. Those are some of the questions we had is, okay, when things go bad, where's the partnership and where's the handshake back, like, hey, we let you down, here's some money back. We didn't see that.
Thank you, Jason. Kevin, please.
I think it bears noting that at one point, this was 10% of our budget and 10% of the water district budget. However, that's when our budget was half or less than what it is now. Further, my understanding is we're not even allowed to use these hydrants for training because it mucks up the system. The hydrant they want us to use for training is over at the wellhead, which is too much pressure, I'm told. I'm seeing a shake of hand in the audience, so there's no deal here, folks. This is them wanting us to feel bad for them for their debt load. It's not our responsibility. The value is not there. We need to figure out other ways, and there are other ways. Evan Kate made a great point. Cisterns. You want cisterns? I mean, yeah, I'll vote for cisterns. We'll get the water. You just need to be a lot smarter with our money.
Thank you, Kevin. For the testimony, Article 13. John, please.
So there's a lot of good suggestions here. Yes, cisterns are an option. Yes, a tanker is an option. Are cisterns going to be in place this year if you need the water? No. If you were to go with this deal at least this year, you would give the opportunity to start putting cisterns in, mapping out where they go. Yes, there is concerns about which hydrants we are able to use. But these are concerns that need to be addressed to the Tilton Northfield Water District. We had a meeting with them, and trust me, I don't like being restricted on water and the charge. I wasn't too happy when I heard about it either, and I probably didn't react as professionally as I should have when I first heard it. We went in, we discussed it, we made sure we had that option to step back from the deal rather than being locked in for 5 years. These are all great options that are being placed on the table to better bring the money, the water that we need in. But it's not going to happen immediately. There's a process for that. Absolutely, if we had built a station 10, 15 years ago, we could be looking at a tanker. And through contracts, you could have paid off a tanker. However, that's not where we're at right now. Right now, we need to deal with what we have going on now. We can say no to paying for this. Absolutely, you can vote no. And in doing so, the Tilton Northfield Water District has said that they will bill us individually or they will shut off hydrants. There's a whole process they have to go through, and there's a whole public relations piece of this that would have into place, including potentially legals and things like that. So that's all part of the equation. I don't like the rate we're paying. The commissioners don't like the rate we're paying. That's part of why we went back to them and we discussed it with them. But unfortunately, this late in the game, we weren't able to get it down any lower, because trust me, I wanted it a lot lower. But at least we're not doing it for 5 years, and we can look at trying to build these cisterns, placing them around, and other dry hydrants and things like that. There's many options out there, but do you want water this year or not?
Thank you, John. Chuck, please.
Yeah, Chuck Mitchell, Tilton, I call the question.
All right. There is a motion to call a question. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Helen. Okay, so that is non-debatable. We're going to vote on that. It takes 2/3 majority to approve the motion. So the motion is to call the question on Article 13. Those in favor of calling the question, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, I so declare it. So, Article 13, to see if the district will vote to see if the district will vote to authorize the commissioners to enter into a 5-year agreement beginning January 1st, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2025 in the amount of $629,942 for the purpose of providing pressurized hydrant services necessary for fire suppression and raise and appropriate the annual cost of $125,988 for this year. This agreement contains an escape clause and is a special warrant article. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and is not recommended by the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Those in favor of Article 13 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. Moderator is somewhat in doubt. Assistant moderators, please. So we're going to go for a show of voter cards. Please make sure you raise your card high enough so that it's very clear for the assistant moderators to count. Appreciate that. So those in favor of Article 13 as read, please raise your cards now. All right, thank you. Those opposed to Article 13, please hold up your cards now. Yeah. All right, so there were 18 votes in the affirmative and 19 votes opposed. Just one second. You asked for a repeat of the, it's 18 in favor and 19 opposed. Well, I haven't actually.
Yeah, that's good, what he said.
Okay. Okay, so Article 13 fails. So you get a majority and I so declare. So Kevin? Moved and seconded, moved by Kevin and seconded by Jason to protect the vote under RSA 40:10. Discussion on that motion? All right, those in favor of protecting your vote on Article 13, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes have it, I so declare it. Reconsideration is restricted on Article 13. Article 14. Is
Well, I can appreciate democracy. The amount of money that we just voted to not support. What is our plan B in the district when we receive a bill for $1,200 per hydrant? That's going to put us financially in a bad spot.
I'll allow somebody to respond to that quickly if you want, but we have moved on from the article.
The meeting
yes,
for the other
exactly. But let's see anybody jumping to respond.
There's certainly no money in the budget for that.
Thank you, Kevin. Yep. All right, Article 14. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate $129,185 for the purpose of purchasing fire rescue EMS equipment and ambulance charges, with said funds to be withdrawn from the apparatus and equipment special revenue fund established under RSA 31:95-C, adopted March 7, 2005. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion? Pat, second. Paul, thank you. Eric, please.
This is money that we use every year to purchase. The funds are used to purchase disposable turnout gear, equipment, and supplies. It's also the commissions that we use to pay to collect on ambulance billings. It's also used to purchase other things such as rope, hose, protective clothing, pager replacements, and things like flashlights that the firefighters use.
Thank you, Eric. Further discussion, Article 14. Seeing none. Article 14, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate $129,185 for the purpose of purchasing fire rescue EMS equipment and ambulance charges, with said funds to be withdrawn from the apparatus and equipment special revenue fund established under RSA 31:95-C, adopted March 7, 2005. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Those in favor of Article 14 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, I so declare it. Article 14 passes. We're on to the last page. Article 15. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $720,000 for the purpose of purchasing a new fire engine and equipment, with said funds to be withdrawn from the apparatus and equipment special revenue fund established under RSA 31:95-C, adopted March 7, 2005. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article was recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion? Thank you, Pat. Second, Paul. Thank you. John, please.
All right. So this is Last year, we voted to replace one of our apparatus. They both are very old, they've been beat down. We paid out a large amount for maintenance this past year. That's why we actually had to plan ahead to possibly approach DRA because the maintenance costs were so high on our vehicles. It's an aging fleet. So because of that, we're trying to get the second apparatus, which is, we've had times this year where we've had two apparatus in the garage at the same time. We actually had to borrow an engine from a neighboring town. When it comes to being an emergency and you need that truck getting there, that's really not very comforting, especially when you need that water that we talked about on scene as fast as possible. But not having an engine to respond is not very good. The cost of these engines are very high, unfortunately, because our stationing plan right now with our dorms over at Center Street has a very small bay opening to get in of 12 by 12. So that's not even the current industry standard for the bays for fire apparatus. So because of that, we actually pay more to make it fit into the smaller bays, which is unfortunate. If we had 14 by 14 or bigger bays from a newer station, we wouldn't be paying some of that engineering cost to get down. This is an exact duplicate of the one that we approved last year, so the engineering costs aren't a part of this. Unfortunately, with everything we're seeing, costs of building supplies has gone up this year for any kind of material. So that's been a slight increase over last year, but essentially it's the same as last time, and we're saving on the engineering cost.
Thank you, John. Kevin, please.
Kevin Keith, I have an amendment for the article.
Okay. Can you go ahead and read it yourself? First off, are you intending to take what you have and replace the entire article as it reads?
Yes.
Thank you.
Article 15, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $300,000 for the purpose of refurbishing an existing engine, with said funds to be withdrawn from the apparatus and equipment fund established under RSA 31:95-C, adopted March 7, 2005.
Helen, could you by chance, yes, thank you. Yeah. Would you like to speak to the amendment?
As Mr. Silly appropriately put, we spend extra money on these engines because of the facilities that we currently have. We get earlier this evening, somebody talked about possibly building a fire station next year. And there are companies out there that specialize in refurbishing fire engines. I did some research, and most of them will give you a quote that ranges somewhere in the vicinity of about 25% of the cost of buying a new engine. So I was a little generous and made $300,000, given that a new engine is $700,000. So I went a little close to half rather than 25%. These same companies also sell refurbished engines. So they're reputable organizations. We could save more than half of the cost of a new engine. And then in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later, we have an appropriately sized facility so that we're not spending extra money to engineer an engine so it fits within a restricted area. We can refurbish a current engine a couple of years from now when we have the appropriate facilities. Then we can look at building an engine that doesn't require engineering costs and things change and special this and special that. Again, let's spend our money wisely. And John, it wasn't a lot of money last year. Maybe it was to you $18,000. It's a lot of money, but it's a lot less than $700,000 to buy a new engine. That's going to require maintenance as well. So let's spend less, get longer life out of what we have now. We're not going to be spending extra money to build an engine because it doesn't fit in our building. And we'll save the taxpayers some money.
Thank you, Kevin. I was remiss in requesting a second to the proposed amendment. We have it from Greg. Thank you. I should have done that before I asked him to speak to it. So, further testimony? Yeah, Jason.
Jason Wright, Tilton. It's actually a great idea, and I think if there was a better candidate of a vehicle to refurbish, I think that's a great way to go. Keep in mind that this fund does not allow us to pay for refurbishment or maintenance or repair on any of our rolling stock. If we're going to make an expense from the apparatus and equipment fund, it's for purchases, not redos. I mean, it's a great idea, it's a great direction to go, but it would be raised and appropriated through new taxes.
Thank you, Jason. I recognize Mike and Kevin.
Yeah, I was going to pretty much say the same thing. The apparatus and equipment fund doesn't allow us to use funds to repair rolling stock as we have it. And it's only to purchase new equipment.
Thank you, Mike. Kevin, please.
Mr. Moderator, while I can appreciate Mr. Cates' offer on the refurbishment of the engine, I think that that's a great way to go. When you have a viable vehicle that can sustain refurbishment. We have proven time and time again with the 2 engines that we have that it's not a viable option. We've thrown good money out the bad on previous refurbishment. Unfortunately, when those vehicles were purchased, they were lower budget vehicles, and that's unfortunately we own them, and that's what we have. And it's beyond time to replace them. I think that we should consider that in the future, and maybe we want to change the language for the apparatus and equipment fund to do that. I think that the particular vehicles that the chief has spec'd out to the committee, that these are viable vehicles for refurbishment. But in this particular case, I don't think that it warrants this.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin, please.
However, you have to question something. That question has to be, do you recall when we bought engine 3, what we were told? We were told that is the engine, that is the here and the now. This thing will last us a long, long time. Fast forward to, a year ago, early this year. We were told these engines are unreliable. Well, if they're unreliable, why has nothing been done operationally to change their operation? Engine 3 right now is sitting outside, unattended, left running the entirety of this meeting. If that's unreliable, it's not unreliable.
Thank you, Kevin. 1 second. Anybody else care to provide testimony on Amendment 1 to Article 50?
So in relation to doing a refurb on this engine, back in, I believe it was 2016, this engine was refurbed and was gone probably for about 3 months. And it went from stem to stern on it. Since then, we've rebuilt the engine, rebuilt the turbochargers. Everything in this truck has been gone over already, and it still, every single day, surprises me when it goes out the door because literally, every week something goes wrong with this truck. Most recently, the power steering unit, and that's scheduled to be replaced next week, this Wednesday, I believe. At a cost, I'm not exactly, it's a few $1,000s. We already spent $5,000 this year on the truck, not counting the power steering unit. In the last 4 years, we've averaged $20,000 a year in repairs and maintenance on this vehicle alone. It has 120,000 miles on it already. It has served its full purpose. It has run its life. All the compartments leak. The equipment that we keep in the compartments are rusting sometimes because of the constant leaking inside the compartments. We've tried to address this by the manufacturer, and he's done his best, so he says, to fix it, and it's still unfixable. The doors on the truck are crooked because when this truck was fairly new, it was rear-ended, and it probably should have been totaled and replaced with a new vehicle, but at the time, they decided to fix it and put it back in service. So this is what we have, the 2006 fire engine. Now it's 15 years old, and it's run its course. It's time to replace it. And even if we sign a contract now to replace this vehicle, it's still going to be another whole year before the new vehicle arrives. So we still have to maintain and fix it as it stands. The new engine that we ordered last year, I hope to have that in service by the end of this October. So it is appropriate for us to sign a new contract this year to replace engine 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody that has not spoken to Amendment 1, Article 15, can you speak? Kevin.
Kevin K. Tilton. We have 2 engines currently, do we not? So why are we only focusing on 1 engine that you're saying we've done all this work to? Because we have 2 engines, so there are 2 candidates for refurbishment. And regarding refurbishment, it's not if you know what it does, Chief, if you know what it does, Mr. LaChapelle, they take the vehicle apart completely. Every nut, bolt, washer is removed. The engine is removed. The engine is rebuilt. Anything that needs to be replaced is replaced. So to say that engine 1 was refurbished a few years ago is an inaccurate statement. I'll stand by what I said. There's no need for a new engine. We can refurbish one however we have to word the article, rather than spending more than twice what it would take to repair one of the 2 engines that we currently have.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, just a reminder that we are discussing the proposed amendment to Article 15. Mrs. Gretchen.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So, I hear what Mr. Cade is saying about refurbishment, and I get that. I got a mechanic at home that will bring a car down to the frame and build it back up, make it shiny and new looking. I get it. I know how much work is involved in that. The other part of that is, I'm not warm and fuzzy about a $750,000 new one, because it's, and I know this again because I have a mechanic at home, they tell you this is great, and then 2 years later you find out, yeah, that was the first year of that motor, and they have problems with it. So we're kind of damned if we do and damned if we don't. You know what you understand what I'm saying? You know, do you do the refurbishment? Because also when I'm coming to these meetings, I know that other communities buy used because they can't afford new. And that's why we put the apparatus and equipment fund in. But again, when I came to that meeting, we talked about what the apparatus and equipment fund is and how we spend the money today. That was not how it was proposed to us when we put that out and we were putting the money together. Because there are nuances to it now that we spend money. Because at first it was only equipment, and now we have training and this and that. There are some nuances in that. Don't say no. I don't want to play with you tonight. I just don't have the energy tonight.
Stand.
I know. So you can understand when we come here and we have these amendments and warrant articles about different ways to spend money to fix things and buy things. Sometimes we feel like we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. It's a statement.
Thank you, Gretchen. All right, further discussion on Amendment 1 to Article 15. All right, seeing none, this is a vote on the proposed amendment, which reads, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $300,000 for the purpose of refurbishing an existing engine with said funds to be withdrawn from the apparatus and equipment fund established under RSA 31:95-C, adopted March 7, 2005. Those in favor of the proposed amendment, which would replace this.
if, Chuck Mitchell, Tilton, if this motion says to withdraw the money from this particular apparatus fund, and then it's been stated that in fact you cannot take the money from the apparatus fund, then I think it's kind of a moot point. I don't think this is a legal motion. I would challenge that. I think it's up to the moderator to make a decision whether or not this is a legal motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. All right, moderator is going to take a moment to confer with council. It's my understanding that, as mentioned, that you can't use money from the apparatus and equipment fund for the purpose of refurbishing. You have to buy new. So the moderator's ruling on this is that we're going to vote on the amendment anyway, but just understand that that's the case, and it's probably, if you pass the amendment, and ultimately pass that as Article 15, it's probably not going to have the desired effect. So I'm going to, because it was proposed, and that's my ruling, we're going to vote on the amendment, proposed amendment to Article 15 as read. Those in favor of Amendment 1 to Article 15 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. Nays have it. Amendment 1 fails. All right, back to the original article, which I'm not going to read again until we're ready for the vote. Is there further discussion on Article 15? Yep.
So here we are, $700,000 plus 2 years in a row. These trucks, although they'll be staggered in delivery, I'd expect that they would have the same life expectancy. So fast forward, we just heard that engine 3, which is sitting outside running in its unreliable state, has come to the end of its useful life after 13 or 14 years. We were told when we bought engine 3, it's going to go 20 or more years. So, how long are these engines going to last? Were we being misled then, or were we being misled now? So, however long these trucks last, we're going to be in the same situation again of buying 2 trucks 2 years in a row, which at best is very poor management.
Thank you, Kevin. Further discussion on Article 15. Jason, please.
Jason Wright, Tilton. I had that same concern that Kevin did, is that, okay, so we would, if we had 2 new trucks in a very back-to-back situation, then would we be in another future back-to-back situation 15, 20 years from now? I don't feel that that's how it would be. I think we've kicked the can down the road on getting our 2 main trucks replaced for so long that we've kind of hit the 100-year, it's the perfect storm, that now both trucks are in really, really bad shape. But I would feel much better if we replaced the truck with a new truck. And when we have, because I feel like trying to refurbish what's outside or what's back at the firehouse would be like wanting to do a restoration on a 79 Pinto. versus all the homework and research that has been done on the current prototype that we have the engineering done for on 2 identical trucks, I would feel much better refurbing and restoring either of these 2 newly purchased trucks at the 15 or 20-year mark, if so desired. Having listened to what the committee, there was, you know, a group of people that were put together to really study this between the firefighters and other members to do the homework, to do the research, because like Kevin said, every truck we've gotten was the truck, and then once we got it, it wasn't great, but I think there's been growth and there's been learning from that, and I really feel that the trucks that are being prototyped, the one that we're going to take delivery on, we're going to know really soon how great it's going to be when we take delivery on it, prove it out for a year, and while if this passes and we order this truck, there's time to react to the manufacturer and say, hey, listen, we already got truck 1, and here's what you need to, great, we love it, or here's what you need to do while you're in production. But I would feel better about not thinking about now, but thinking 15 years out of refurbing either of those trucks. I think they would be good candidates based on everything we've learned about cab and frame and everything else.
Thank you, Jason. We've heard considerable testimony regarding both Article 15, the proposed amendment. Starting to hear some of the same sort of things. So, at this point, I haven't heard from Helen yet, so I'm going to recognize Helen first.
Thanks, and I'm sitting here pondering to myself, how long is a fire truck supposed to last? And I go, hey, I can Google this. And everything says 10 to 20 years, 20 years being a large lifespan. Engine 1 was from 2001, Engine 3 is from 2006. We think we've done well to keep these trucks on the road, and it's time to give our fighters the equipment they need to do the jobs that they need to do for us. I mean, I couldn't imagine giving them radio, use AED to try to resuscitate me. They've done really, really well. And this is the lifespan of this piece of equipment. Pumping water. It's not like we're going out and buying a car. So think about what it does.
Thank you, Helen. Gretchen.
Okay, so my question is, fund balance. I see $830,000 in the apparatus and equipment fund. Is that right? Am I reading that correctly? So we just pulled $129,185 out in the previous warrant article. This warrant article is for $720,000. Those two figures are $849,185. I get the money replenishes, and if the next warrant article goes in, that's even going to be more money coming out. Can we really spend the money before we get it?
Sorry. Jason is offering the answer.
The number of the warrant articles are not to exceed amount. It's my understanding that the actual cap, the purchase price is going to be below that. We had to set a cap because there were some unanswered questions, and you don't pay for the truck until you actually get it much further out.
Did we overspend the money? What did we spend on the truck that's in production now? Did we spend the money we got or more? How much? I heard it was tight.
681,000.
And we thought it was going to be...
In that area, I can't remember.
And we thought it was going to be how much money?
It was going to be, I think we appropriated 705,000.
I'm just, logistically, I'm looking at this and it's kind of like, are we spending the stimulus money before we get it? You know what I mean?
I understand what you're saying. It's all in the capital outlay improvement program, which I think maybe you've gotten a copy of it. It lays out how we buy things and how we spend things and how that capital improvement program fund stays solvent the whole way through. So I'm
just wondering from DRA's vantage point, is this legal to spend money? When you have 500,000 and your numbers add up to more, is that legal?
Yes, you can't spend it unless you have it.
Thank you, Gretchen. Kathy, were you looking to speak? Okay.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Waldron's comment on, we heard that the previous apparatus were the best. And Kevin, I'm with you. When we make a purchase of this magnitude, I've had sleepless nights personally over which fire apparatus to buy. It's a lot of money, and when you go stand before the taxpayers to ask for $720,000, you know, that's probably one of the largest expenses we'll ever have. This particular company, I'm making these comments just add confidence to the choice of the truck. This company has had issues with their engines and their ladders at the 10 or the 15-year mark, and they've made right on it. They've made right on issues that were not their responsibility. It was the responsibility of the pump that was in the vehicle, and this company stood behind it when they didn't need to. I personally have stood and shook the hand of the owner of the company, and his last name is on the side of the truck. And I chose this truck because he said, listen, my name is on the side of this truck, and we stand behind our name. So if that means anything to the voters that are in this room tonight, in choosing what type of fire apparatus we buy, whether it's the best, we could all say Ford, Chevy, Dodge, whatever it is. But I do believe that our committee, our chief, and our commissioner have done an outstanding job choosing a company that stands behind their name. I don't know if that means anything to you, Kevin, but it certainly had meant something to me when choosing.
Thank you, Kevin. Kathy, please.
Kathy Mitchell, Phil, my question.
Okay, it's a motion to call a question. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Second by Helen. Okay, so that ends debate. Needed 2/3 majority to call the question. Those in favor of calling the question on Article 15, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Article 15, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $720,000 for the purpose of purchasing a new fire engine and equipment, with said funds to be withdrawn from the Apparatus and Equipment Special Revenue Fund established under RSA 31:95-C, adopted March 7, 2005. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and Budget Committee. Majority vote required. Those in favor of Article 15 as read, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The moderator is not in doubt. The ayes have it. Article 15 passes, I so declare. Article 16. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $285,000 for the purpose of purchasing a new ambulance and equipment, with said funds to be withdrawn from the Apparatus and Equipment Special Revenue Fund established under RSA 31:95-C, adopted March 7, 2005. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Majority vote required. Is there a motion? Pat. Seconded by Jason. Eric, please.
Thank you. The ambulance to be replaced is A2. It's a 2011 Chevy G4500 van. It currently has 93,000 miles on it. It has a DEF or a DEF computer problem that requires a monthly visit to the dealer for a computer adjustment, which basically means that it spends a day out of service every month, but that's also the time and manpower to send people over to pick it up and then, or bring it there and then pick it back up. It's maxed out due to the additional equipment that's had to be put on it, gross vehicle weight. It has numerous front end suspension and brake repairs. The new ambulance that will be there will be an equivalent of the current A1 ambulance, which is a 2017 Ford F550 4x4, which costs 22 cents per mile to operate after being in service for 4 years. A2 currently costs us $1.03 per mile driven in maintenance and repair costs. It's used, the new ambulance is the first primary ambulance. It's used for 75% of the calls and will put 18,000 miles a year on it. The older ambulance, which would become the 2017, would become the second due backup ambulance used on 25% of the calls and generate about 6,000 miles per year.
Thank you, Eric. Further testimony, Article 16. Kevin, please.
So here we are again. When we bought that ambulance, we were told it is the thing. It is what we need to have. The chief at the time was warned of known issues with that particular chassis. Guess what? We own it. So now we're being told, we were told in 17 when we bought F550, yep, that's the rig. It's worked out pretty good. 5 years later, 6 years later. So the question is, why do we need a $285,000 ambulance? Those that know we can buy an ambulance for significantly less money. The engine in Article 15 would be identical to the one we currently have on order. And guess what? This ambulance is scheduled to be the same thing we already have. I personally am a fan of that particular ambulance chassis. Why do we need 2 four-wheel drive ambulances? Well, I'd say we really don't need 2 four-wheel drive ambulances, but you know what? We want 2 four-wheel drive ambulances. The uptick in cost from 2-wheel drive to 4-wheel drive is whatever it is. The rolling stock going over the road, moving parts. You see mechanics who here in the field. I'll tell you, I think that it costs more to operate a 4-wheel drive vehicle than it does a 2-wheel drive vehicle. It seems that we're in the habit of going to the newest, shiniest, and seemingly most expensive way that we can possibly go. I have made known to 2 of the commissioners that there are other options and got very little response from them. We could probably save at least 10 grand by buying a gasoline-powered unit instead of a diesel-powered unit. Remember, these things only last 10 years. Oh, it's got a brand new, very well-tested 7.3 V8 gasoline engine that is available in the ambulance chassis. But I don't believe we'll buy that because it's not what we want. So, I'll end with a question, although I know no one's obligated to answer the question. I'll ask the question. I'd like it to be answered by the commissioners, as they have final say in what is bought. The question is, what will the process be for choosing a new ambulance? Will you do the homework required to get the best price for the taxpayers? Will you require the chief to rethink this and come back to you with some other options? Or will you simply sign off on whatever he wants, whatever he says he needs?
Thank you, Kevin. There is a question. Eric, do you want to?
The ambulance went out to bid, and this was the best price that was given to us.
Thank you, Eric. Further testimony, Article 16. Jason, please. Oh, I'm sorry.
I've used this example before, but if I were a carpenter, a handsaw could certainly cut a 2x4, but if I want to be more efficient, do a more effective job, I would use a skill saw. And then they came up with this fancy tool called the chop saw, and I can do the job in 3 times as fast, and it can be more productive. We can certainly find an ambulance that's $150,000, and the efficiencies and the safety features that they build into these ambulances today, it allows our folks to do the job efficiently. Certainly the 4-wheel drive versus 2-wheel drive, I would like to think that if I lived on the end of Mean Hill Road or in an area of Tilton on Test House, I would pray that if someone in my family was in cardiac arrest, that the 4-wheel drive ambulance was not at Palmer Hospital or at CMC. I think that's a rough gamble. I think these four-wheel drive chassis have proven their weight and goal in the EMS industry now. So I would be in favor of replacing what they're proposing.
Thank you, Kevin. Jason?
I'm definitely in favor of an ambulance, since the ambulance is the moneymaker. That's how we get funds into the apparatus and equipment fund. I don't think it's a year to pass or skip a year for an ambulance. I'd like to think that the commissioners did their homework and would continue to do their homework and continue to be open-minded. We hired the commissioners, we voted for them, and we continue to re-elect them. And hopefully they will exercise that judgment, especially one that just got re-elected. That being said, the ambulance that has problems with DEF, that's tied to diesel. I deal with all the state fleet managers, and I've heard nothing but angry things about the world of DEF fluid in the diesel world, and park regen, and all the things that come with the new fangled equipment with diesel. I'm kind of a gas guy, but I work with the guys at down to Campus Services with DOT, and I have towns and municipalities that are coming and talking about their new Komatsu loaders and this, that, and the other thing. And DEF and diesel are kind of a curse, so to have a piece of equipment that's out to be saving lives and having a DEF computer problem because of diesel, I too would get away from diesel and go to gas. And I've had this conversation with Kevin a couple times. Diesel is for if you got to push and you got to pull, but I wouldn't give up on four-wheel drive because you never know what ambulance you're going to be in and what road or what road conditions, 4 seasons, whether it's mud, snow, class 5, 6 road, anything like that. But I would hope that our commissioners would go back and resolve it, but I don't think this is the year to skip on an ambulance. The light bulb came on for me earlier with the slide about ambulance calls and how many ambulance calls we kind of give up to our neighbors, and that's lost money. I don't know if it's a lot, but there is a loss. And if we've got an ambulance in the shop on occasion, and that's a trend that's going to continue, if our ambulances are questionable, I think an ambulance is a great expenditure for us because, like I opened with, those are the ones that go out and make the money for our funds.
Thank you, Jason. Further discussion, Article 16. I'm just seeing if anybody else wants to speak. Let's try not to get into a point counterpoint. Try not to get into a point counterpoint. Good. Kevin, please.
So I agree with you. I did not mean to tell you I don't want to buy an ambulance. I don't want to buy a cookie cutter the one we got. You can sing the praises of four-wheel drive all you want, but I'm not the only one that saw that four-wheel drive ambulance in the ditch at the bottom of Bean Hill Road in Spencerville. We went many years without four-wheel drive. We have one. That's awesome. We can show the taxpayers some love and be a little smarter with their money.
Thank you, Kevin. Further testimony, Article 16. Seeing none. Article 16, see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $285,000 for the purpose of purchasing a new ambulance and equipment, with said funds to be withdrawn from the Apparatus and Equipment Special Revenue Fund, established under RSA 31:95-C, adopted March 7, 2005. Funds appropriated from this fund do not affect the tax rate. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Those in favor of Article 16 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. The ayes have it. I so declare that Article 16 passes. Article 17. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the Budget Committee recommended sum of $2,589,216 for general municipal operations. This article does not include appropriations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and the Budget Committee. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion? Thank you, Pat. Second? Caitlin, thank you. All right, John, please.
right, so this is the overall operating budget for the year, what we're trying to go for. A lot of time is put into this by the commissioners and then by the budget committee. This is what you have in front of you.
Thank you, John. Further discussion on Article 17. Gretchen.
So, question for you. I went to the meeting for the FEMA money for the 4 firefighters. And I guess there's a couple questions I have. I just found out that we front the money and then they reimburse us. So we're raising through taxation to pay for this new staffing in the operating budget, and then at some point FEMA will pay us back. Is that correct?
Sure, FEMA, so we hire the firefighters, we pay them for a month or a quarter, then we submit to FEMA for reimbursement for whatever, if we do it monthly or quarterly, however we want to do it.
I don't remember that fact being provided to me during the meeting, so it caught me off guard tonight. So my next question is, how much did the overtime line go up this year? Because you didn't give me the line detail like you have in the past, for some reason. It's different, so I had no way of knowing certain things.
So the overtime line request did go up. It was definitely cut by the budget committee, but the overtime for the 4 additional firefighters is extremely minimal because they don't create overtime because they don't have time to take off in the first year.
In the first year, yeah.
So they get like a week off.
Understood.
And then they do earn sick time, and if they get sick, they will take some time.
What was the overtime line in the budget this year? Just curious.
Into that page.
Because I think it was like 150,000 last year. Is that correct? No, wasn't that? It was close to 200,000?
Yes.
You're kidding me. Wow.
Last year, the overtime was $203,788. Last year, we spent in overtime $214,711. The budget committee appropriated this year $215,000.
So with the 4 firefighters, career firefighters, we now have a head count of how many career firefighters, full-time career firefighters? We've gone from like 12 to 16.
Correct.
Thank you, Gretchen. Pat, please.
Mr. Moderator, I'm really concerned about the issue on the water and the hydrants, having absolutely no money in the budget to address that if that comes up, even if it's a per usage. So I have a motion to amend the budget to add $50,000 for the sole purpose of the water expense, and to further direct the commissioners to reassess the options for the district and report back to us at the 2022 annual meeting.
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Gretchen. Okay, I just have to make sure I understand clearly. The motion as it's written to add $50,000. So you're proposing to add $50,000 to the $2,589,216. For the sole purpose of the water expense. Further direct, this, I can't accept the motion as it's written, because it,
That would be different.
I can't accept it because it's adding money to the general fund, and you can't tell the commissioners how to spend that extra money. correct on that.
My concern is that we wiped out the fire hydrant, the water expense of the fire hydrants. I live on a dead-end street in Tilton that has no water around except the fire hydrant. If I have a fire, in need of fire suppression system, what's the liability now? You have no money in the budget whatsoever, and you already stated earlier that every single time you use it, they're going to charge you, but there's no money in your budget to do that. So how are you going to add money in the budget except at an annual meeting?
Yes, right. So if your motion to amend the budget were simply to add $50,000 to the operating budget, the proposed operating budget in Article 17, that is acceptable.
But don't you have to have an intent on that?
You can discuss your intent in discussing the amendment.
Okay, you can cross out for the sole purpose. And we can
To
say it in
amend
our
the
minutes
budget
for
to
the...
add $50,000.
Right. And then we can, in the minutes, we can say that it's...
Yes, exactly.
Now we need a second.
We do need a second, but first we have to come up with a number.
50,000.
Right, but I gotta come up with a bottom line number to...
Oh. Well, it was very hard to read the budget this year, but I don't like the new one.
All right, so my math is correct here. You're proposing to just change the recommended sum of the operating budget to $2,639,216 for general municipal operations. And none of the other language related to how to spend it is going to be included. Okay.
Yes, if your math is correct, yes.
I'm going to read this back. This is what I understand the amendment to be. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the budget committee recommended sum. Actually, you know what? We can't. Yeah, it's not recommended yet. So we would have to further amend the article to not include the phrase, the budget committee recommended sum. So it would just be, see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,639,216 for general municipal operations. This article does not include appropriations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately, and you will not have the line, this article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and Budget Committee. Does that sound like what you're asking? Okay. Kevin has a point of order before we go to a second. Yes.
I would submit that you do not have a properly written, presented, and signed amendment before you. You stated at the beginning of the meeting you were not going to help anyone write an amendment, and that's exactly what you just did.
Well, his point, we got to what you wanted to say, Pat. We haven't asked for a second yet. So if you would like to revisit it and just write out in your amendment what you'd like to say, that would be more appropriate. And we'll take a minute and let her do that. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Kevin. Okay. All right, proposed amendment to Article 17 to replace the language that is currently in the Article 17 of the warrant. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate this is as written, $2,589,266 for general municipal operations. Yeah. Yeah. I think I can tell you the number that you'd like to put in. Yep. Yes. Understood. All right, it's $2,639,216. Okay, the proposed amendment to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate $2,639,216 for general municipal operations. Is there a second to that motion? Chuck, thank you. Okay, she spoke to her amendment prior to getting it straight here. Further discussion, Paul, please.
I'm not in favor of the amendment, and the reason I'm not in favor of it is there's only one way we're going to resolve this issue. And we have this discussion every year. There's only one way to resolve it, and that's to force the hand of the water bill. And also provide incentive for the commissioners and the chief to find a resolution to this problem. If we just arbitrarily say $50,000 will cover the water bill for next year, I think we're just kind of grabbing numbers out of the air. I think by forcing the hand of water company, we are going to get a more accurate, fair number from them. And if for 1 year it means cutting the budget to the bone or moving money elsewhere in order to pay a water bill, one thing will be for sure, and that's the following year we won't be having that same discussion. So I'm not in favor of the amendment. I'm in favor of holding the water company's feet to the fire and asking the commissioners to do everything they can to get a fair and accurate number for water.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else care to speak to the amendments? Oh, I'm sorry. Oops, I recognize that, John.
Yeah, John Skinny. I think with our vote already, we've sent a very, very clear message to the water district that we're not happy with it. The problem is by cutting all of it out, we're also hurting ourselves. We could be taking money to pay for some of this stuff. It turns out that we have to pay for that away from other things that we've budgeted. So I really strongly feel that $50,000, which is like $70,000 less than what we intended to pay, that's a pretty clear message. And we also didn't agree for 5 years. $50,000 is good to leave in the budget so we don't hurt other line items. But
thank you, John. Jane, please.
My concern is that $50,000 and not
All right, can you hear me now? My problem with taking only $50,000, we're not in a position to say that that's going to be used for the water, so we're better off not saying anything. One of the reasons the Budget Committee made the decision we did to not recommend anything was because, and I can say this, and Kevin Cates left the room,
but I'm older than dirt. And when you're older than dirt, you can remember back when this whole thing first came up. And it first came up because every year we sat in a room like we're sitting in tonight, and we went over and over and over and over what we were going to do, and it was voted down, but then someone came back with another recommendation, and we somehow came up with money. So one day, one commissioner who's no longer with us got the bright idea that if we came up with a 5-year contract, that would make everybody in the district happy, and we could go on and go on and go on. And that's just what's happened. And this year, the Budget Committee refused to recommend another 5-year contract. The point is that there is a fire at your house. The RSA protects us so that the fire department could go in and use the water in that hydrant. That's not the issue. The issue is, what are we going to pay to do that? Right now, we're paying what we're asking for, the $125,000. If you go to what the fire department says they're going to do, it's going to be $12,000 or whatever dollars per hydrant. We don't know, and as Paul brought up, we won't know until we say no. We're going to use this fire hydrant and see what they do. Worst case scenario, they take us to court. At least we'll get a ruling in court as to whether they can or cannot refuse for us to use the fire hydrants. At least we'll have an answer. Until then, we won't. And to just put another dilly-dally of money in to say that this is going to be used for the fire department doesn't solve our problem. We're back to ground zero again. Let's take a stand and see what the commissioners can come up with, and see what the water district says in return. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Pat, before you speak again, I'd like to give others the opportunity. So, Gretchen, you want to speak?
Pat, I understand what you're doing. I do. I like your style. I think that if we give and put $50,000 in the budget, they're going to write us an invoice for $50,000. And then next year they're going to send us an invoice for $65,000 or whatever. We're not solving the problem. We're throwing something at the wall to see what sticks. If your hand is empty, nothing hits the wall. Negotiations start at that point. We need to start at the ground level. I think it's really, right now it's going to be a grassroots, start at the bottom.
Thank you, Gretchen. Pat, oh, sorry. Did you speak this? All right, Jason.
I'm going to steal a little bit of Kevin's thunder, because Kevin and I were probably on the conservative side of this year's budget and committee process, and a lot of things in this budget passed at a higher number on a 4-2 or a 5-2 vote. And if you don't think there's $50,000 worth of float in this budget, think again. There is some airspace, and tell you what, when the budget goes into effect, if we get a bill, and it's early on in the process, if we get some bill for some dollar amount, there's a lot of ifs that Jane brought up. There's time to talk about it, there's time to fight about it, and there's money to pay bills. If we got to the end of the year and we were $50,000 short because of the water situation, we could go to DRA and do what we did with the truck repairs and things. I don't think we need to put another dollar into this budget, and I'm the guy that's on the low end saying we could have put a few less dollars into this budget this year, and that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Jason. Further discussion? Article 17. Mike?
So I just want to read to you the last paragraph of the letter that the water commissioner sent to the fire commissioners. And this is when they weren't coming to an agreement. They said the new pressurized hydrant rate for 2021 is going to be set at $493.73 per hydrant per quarter for the 99 public hydrants currently utilized by the fire district. This equates to $48,879.27 per quarter, and a total annualized amount of $195,000 $195,517.08 for 2021. This rate will then increase by 4% per year for the next 3 years based on the number of hydrants in service in any quarter.
Thank you, Mike. Pat, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I've never been known to dilly-dally, but my question was there $50,000 that we could pull from if we did, but Jason answered my question. So I am totally against the hydrant. I mean, I was totally for fighting for it. I don't want to pay $125,000, but I was concerned about at the end of the year having to overexpend our budget. That's what I was concerned about. I want to fight the water company, and I'm 150% behind you on that one, Gretchen. However, at this time, because we know we have $50,000 in wiggle room, I'll withdraw my motion.
Kathy. Okay. So, Pat, am I clear that you would like to withdraw your motion on the amendment, and the second also agrees? Yeah. Okay. So the amendment has officially been withdrawn after much discussion. Thank you all for that. So back to the original Article 17. Is there any further discussion on Article 17? Kevin?
Oh.
Yes, Kevin.
We said Kevin. He's the real guy. Call the question.
All right, so is there a second to that? Oh, Kathy. All right, so it has been moved and seconded to, do you have any point of order?
I believe so. Discussion based upon her amendment, not the actual original amendment.
Yeah, you are correct about that. There's quite a bit of discussion on that.
Never fully had a discussion on the original.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that out. Yeah, so Mark just made the point that we had quite a bit of discussion on Amendment 1 as proposed to Article 17, but not so much on the article itself. So the moderator proposes to not accept the call to question at this time on Article 17 so that we can afford hopefully a little bit of conversation regarding the original article. If you're aggrieved with that, you can challenge the moderator's ruling on that. Seeing none, I'll recognize Kevin Waldron.
Thank you. At this meeting last year, this body soundly defeated a proposal to hire 2 new personnel. Our wishes were not heeded by the chief and commissioners. They went ahead and hired not 2, but 4 new personnel. That's double the amount we said no to. They did this by way of quote-unquote free money. A grant that I believe they knew about and or applied for prior to last year's meeting, but didn't tell us. They say their decision was based off participation in a public hearing related to the grant, but I believe that there were more people here last year saying no than there were at that public hearing who supported the idea. The Commissioner's primary function is to carry out the business of the district as directed by votes at this meeting. They failed to do that. The problems here are many. Any expansion of the district should be decided by this body at this meeting. This free money has an expiration date. In 3 years, that expense is strapped directly to the back of the taxpayers. They'll tell you that they'll look for other funding in the future, but trust me, you're going to end up with the bill because there is no other funding. If there were other funding, why wouldn't we be using that now? And the really sad part is the commissioners won't have the potatoes it takes to lay these people off in 3 years when we're we're going to affect their life dramatically. So we have two choices here. We can be complacent and let them do what they want, which I think sets a terrible precedent. Or you can support an amendment to the budget, which should, doesn't dictate because we're a bottom line budget, should force them to abandon the grant and bring the decision on new personnel to this body next year. The people who really should be making that kind of decision.
Further discussion on Article 17. I see Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'll speak mostly the same words that I spoke at the public hearings for the hiring of more firefighters with the FEMA grant. For over the last 20 years, the history behind the FEMA grants is typically there's a match portion that's amortized over 3 or 4 years, depending on the year. This particular year, the FEMA grant was 100% in some aspects to pay their salaries. That was lobbied by the New Hampshire Association of Fire Chiefs to the congressional delegation to get that. We never imagined in a million years that we would succeed with having that grant 100% pay their salaries. And lo and behold, the lobby worked because the other communities that have received these FEMA grants in the past have not had the gift that our district has. I think, in my opinion, the decision that the commissioners had to make was probably one of the most difficult decisions based on that testimony that was given. They were really put to the wall at those public hearings. And they made a decision to move forward based on, in my opinion, community risk reduction. There's no question that having 4 firefighters on duty on the engine for response makes that much of a difference. It's a national statistic, but I'm not here to argue that point tonight. So I think what the commissioners did by moving forward was risky. And I said at that meeting, if they did not plan to work on creative funding moving forward for that I would not be in favor. The commissioners at the time, I guess, made a promise to us that they would look into creative funding, whether it's maneuvering money or finding other funding sources. I'm with Kevin. Where do you find other funding sources? There's a tree to grow on. Let's do it. But they've got a big job ahead of them to try to do that. But we have a 3-year time to make that happen. The clock is ticking now. So I think the fact that they chose to move forward with it put this district and our families in a good spot. And it makes a difference in safety to have before. Enough said. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Kate?
Yes, I would just say that what I've heard is that we have a special gift of having access to these funds for these 3 years, which gives us time to have these creative funding sources. Why would we throw that away? Because you didn't like how it happened. Like, we should use the funds that we have available because during those 3 years we're going to better serve our communities. So we can have this discussion later if they haven't done their jobs, but like, let's give them some time to do that and let's take advantage of it when we have it.
Thank you, Kate.
I attended that meeting. That money doesn't cover everything, salary, benefits, and everything else. So we have a gray area that we have to use. We have to raise money because it doesn't cover everything, right? It covers their base salary, but it doesn't cover everything. So, need to say with the 4 people, there is the opportunity of possibly having up to, I want to say, because I don't know my notes with me, how much money out of pocket that we have to put into our budget for that? Worst case scenario for the 4 people. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking 100,000. I think could be wrong.
So, for this
Go ahead.
There we go. So for this fiscal year, the total cost, the tax impact for these 4 firefighters is $7,260. That's for work uniforms, background checks, and pre-employment physicals.
So less than $8,000 is not covered by the FEMA money. That's it?
That's it.
So benefits and everything else?
Everything else is
Training and
covered.
everything else, so more people, less than $8,000.
That's right.
Thank you, Gretchen. Deputy.
I'm not making any reference to the cost in the first 3 years. I'm talking about year 4 when it adds $500,000 to this budget, is what I'm talking about. And how do you fund it?
Yep.
I would request that we call the question. I think we've heard enough. Thank you.
Second.
Right. Question's been called, has been seconded, moderator's going to accept that. That ends debate. We will take a majority vote, try to voice vote on that. Those in favor of calling the question on Article 17, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, I so declare. Article 17, to see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the Budget Committee recommended sum of $2,589,216 for general municipal operations. This article does not include appropriations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately. This article is recommended by the Board of Commissioners and Budget Committee. Majority vote required. Those in favor of Article 17 as read, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes have it, I so declare Article 17 passes. Article 18, to transact any other business that may legally come before the meeting. Paul. Eric.
As was just mentioned, the commissioner is going to be forming a committee to help with the Safer Grant employee sustainment. So if you are interested in serving on that committee, please submit your contact information to Kathy at the central station. Her email address is info@tnfd.org. And we'll be discussing that at our next meeting in early April.
Thank you, Eric. Further discussion under Article 18, Paul.
I take this opportunity to thank every member of the Budget Committee. We're all volunteers. You give up your valuable free time, and you do a tremendous job for the district. So for that, I say thank you very much. Each and every one of you. To the commissioners, while you do receive a salary, I'm fully aware of the amount of time and effort that goes into your jobs. So for that, I also thank you very much.
Further discussion on Article 18. Yes, John.
So we've discussed tonight in detail pressurized hydrants. Just to let you know, the Tilton Northfield Water District has their annual meeting on April 13th. So if you have concerns about all this, maybe it might be the opportunity to bring it to them directly at their public meeting. April 13th at the garage behind where the fire station, Central Street Station is, at their headquarters building in the garage.
Their annual meeting is held at the Pines Community Center.
I'm sorry? We were at the Pines on April 13th. Thank you very much.
Further discussion on Article 18. All right, I have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second by Pat. The motion was by Jason. Any discussion on that motion? Those in favor on the motion to adjourn, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it, so declare we are adjourned.